Chapter 110. After glancing at the child once again, Zhu Yao left the room. Actually, the main reason why she came here was because of Yu Hanxin. Logically speaking, the appearance of the bug was due to the fight between her and Mu Meiyan. Both of them were responsible for it. Hence, she initially thought that Yu Hanxin was also a bug. Fortunately, Yu Hanxin's face was very clean, and there were no letters on it. In other words, she only needed to focus on guarding against Mu Meiyan. She originally wanted to shamelessly stay here for a few more days. It would be best if she could solve the problem from the root, but after seeing the black shadow behind her, she changed her mind. She felt like she couldn't withstand the blow from that night. But what exactly was that black shadow behind her? If only her master was here, she could ask him about it. Currently, she could only go back and ask Ziamoan directly. Zhu Yao summoned her flying sword. After pondering for a moment, she picked up a piece of incantation paper and transformed it into a sound transmission paper crane. After instructing Qi Han and the others to take good care of the child, she would return first. Only then did she fly away on her flying sword. Celestial Indus sect was located at the edge of a forest, and this forest was even the territory of demonic beasts. The deeper one went, the more demonic beasts there would be. In the innermost part of the forest was the demon realm. It was said that only demonic beasts lived in this place. No one had been there before because there was a boundary river in the middle. The boundary river was a forbidden area for magic. All the cultivators who went there could not use any magic power at all. It was the same for the demonic beasts. However, the demonic beasts were taller and stronger than humans. They could kill a few people just by sitting on them, so almost no practitioner would go there to court death. Initially, Zhu Yao wanted to return to Ancient Hill Sect, and on her way, she would definitely have to pass by a small forest. She changed her mind at the last minute, because she remembered a plot, and it was related to the magic forbidden zone. Hence, he turned around and flew towards the depths of the forest. After Mu Meiyan had been reborn, the reason why she was able to fight against Yu Hanxin, other than Wu Song, who had cultivated the devil path, there was another great helper, and that was the immortal who had met with misfortune. Although he was unable to withstand the heavenly Tao in the later stages and perished, the immortal emperor was still able to help him. However, the immortal weapons and immortal pills that he left behind were of great help to her. Those were all things that belonged to the upper realm, and their lethality was astonishing. And back then, the thing that destroyed Ancient Hill Sect was a mystic artifact called Flames of Karma. It could emit out black flames, and it could not be extinguished by mystic arts. However, Ancient Hill Sect was burned by this fire for an entire day, and not a single disciple survived. Even the sea level had dropped a lot. As for Mu Meiyan, who had possessed Little Radish's body, however, she felt that this was what she should do. She called it revenge for the original owner of her body. He had already annihilated his entire family. This was not revenge, but repaying kindness with enmity. She was also the other reason why Zhu Yao did not want her to take over Little Radish's body no matter what. This forest was very vast. Even though she flew at full speed, she still spent 2 hours before reaching the border. From afar, she could see a huge silver river appearing in front of her eyes. Before Zhu Yao could even sigh at its magnificence, his aura was like a flood. She instantly fell from the sky. Damn, she had forgotten that this was a forbidden area for magic. There was a dull pain in the bottom of his heart, and his body suddenly became very heavy. It had been many years since she had such a feeling. Zhu Yao had no choice but to accept her fate and take a few steps back. The moment she moved, the pressure on her body instantly relaxed, and her strength returned to her body. What a mystical place. Zhu Yao glanced at the beach in front of her. There were many dried branches and withered leaves piled up on the riverbank. She could faintly see the bones of demonic beasts of unknown species. She recalled that Mu Meiyan came to this beach after she became an Azoth core. Then, a jade pendant fell from the sky, and that jade pendant contained the remnant soul of that fallen deity. Initially, she had wanted to place a few rebirth incantations here. The moment the jade pendant fell, the formation would instantly send that deity into reincarnation. Naturally, he would not have the chance to gift the divine pellet or artifact to others. However, The river here was so vast. Only a ghost would know where the jade pendant would fall to. Zhu Yao felt a deep sense of sorrow. Just when he was at a loss as to what to do, a demonic beast suddenly appeared behind him with a roar. A pair of blood-red eyes stared fixedly at her, and it was even drooling, as though it had seen something delicious. It was actually a 9th-rank demonic beast. Its strength was on par with her, an early-stage demigod. Of course, that was the theory. In reality, the moment Zhu Yao released her aura, that demonic beast meowed, as though it was frightened. It laid on the ground and trembled, and it just so happened to choke on its own saliva, as though it wanted to cough, but did not dare to. Its long tail desperately slapped its own chest. Were all demonic beasts this stupid? Zhu Yao silently recalled a certain idiot. All right, they were all this stupid. Currently, she did not have the mood to care about this stupid demonic beast. She simply stared at the white riverbank in front of her and thought about how she could permanently break the cheat of the female antagonist. For a moment, she had even forgotten to retract the dragon's might in her body. When she regained her senses, a black mass of demonic beasts sat there. Zhu Yao fiercely turned her head and was given a fright. She even thought that the way she turned her head was wrong. Just where did this group of demonic beasts pop out from? An elegant white-clothed man walked out from among the demonic beasts and gave her a deep bow with a respectful attitude. Lord, I wonder what instructions do you have for us to come here? Who called you? Even Zhu Yao herself was given a fright. All right? That man's face suddenly reddened, and as though he was a little embarrassed, he looked at her and then said, We sensed Lord's aura, that's why. I wonder what instructions Lord has for us. This subordinate will definitely not refuse. The man's eyes shone, revealing an expression that was similar to Sesame's in the past, and his face was filled with excitement, as though he had taken drugs. Even the group of demonic beasts behind him were the same. Although they were all lying on the ground with a respectful and obedient look, their eyes were all staring straight at her, sparkling. You know? Lord, hurry and look at me. Hurry and look at me. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched, and her face darkened. In an instant, her heart was filled with ridicule, and she did not know where to start. Lord, seeing that she was not speaking, that man suddenly knelt down, and his entire body was about to touch the ground. With an excited look, he said, This lowly one is called Channing. Since young, I have no one to rely on. Lord, please take this lowly one in and serve by your side. The moment his words fell, the eyes of the surrounding beasts were all staring at him. Every single one of them looked as though they wanted to strangle him to death. Shameless bastard. He actually said such rude words. However, why didn't they think of it? They gritted their teeth. Chun Ning turned his head to glance at the group of beasts behind him as well and gave a provocative smile. This daddy here said it. If you have the guts, come bite me. Lord, look at me again. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched as she looked at the person who was still sticking to the ground. Who are you trying to fool? Which demonic beast has someone to rely on? Hey? Sighing, she could now guess that this person who called himself Chan Ning was at the very least a 10th-ranked demonic beast that had taken on a human form. Zhu Yao retracted the aura from her body and waved her hand towards the black mass of beasts. All of you can return to your positions. I don't need you guys. The moment her words fell, Zhu Yao instantly felt the low pressure of the entire place, as well as the resentment and anger. A moment later, the demonic beasts unwillingly began to crawl up and slowly move their feet, as though they were waiting for her to change her mind. Probably because it was close to the demon realm, the demonic beasts in this forest were mostly strong. Just in this group alone, there were 7 to 8 10th-ranked demonic beasts, while the rest were at least 8th-ranked demonic beasts. Other than Chan Ning, who had already taken on a human form, the rest of them were beasts that were as tall as buildings, and when they moved, they were like mountains. Zhu Yao did not know how they were able to quietly crouch behind her. Zhu Yao sighed. Glancing at the beach in front of her, she suddenly had an idea. Since the jade pendant was dropped on this beach, then what if there wasn't a beach? Wait a minute. The moment Zhu Yao called out, the group of demonic beasts that were currently dispersing instantly crawled back, and their eyes instantly shone even brighter than before. Lord, what are your orders? Chun Ning had even rubbed against her body, looking as though he could not wait to hug her thighs. After being coldly glanced at by her, he obediently took a few steps back and once again kneeled on the ground. There's no need to be so formal, right? I do indeed have something to trouble you guys with. When her words fell, a series of responses sounded from below. Lord, please speak. Lord, feel free to instruct us, even if it means death. Oh, Zhu Yao's expression darkened as she looked at this group of overly passionate demonic beasts. Although she clearly knew that they only recognized her as their master because of the suppression of her dragon bloodline, she was still unable to let down her guard in the depths of her heart. After all, she had the experience of almost being bitten to death by demonic beasts before. It's nothing much. I just saw that the surface of this river is too narrow. Zhu Yao activated her lying mode. Cuckoo. Such a beautiful river, yet there's such an ugly riverbank. I feel that it's really affecting the aesthetics, so I wanted to dig the riverbank a little deeper and widen the river surface a little. The moment she said it, Zhu Yao felt that this reason was purely bullshit. Furthermore, that place was a magical forbidden zone, and even she herself did not wish to enter it. Forget about this group of demonic beasts. It would be strange if anyone responded to her request, right? So that's the case. Lord's words are too logical. I have long found this riverbank to be an eyesore. That's right, it's so ugly. It's simply not fit to be called a riverbank. It's so ugly that it affects my mood. Dig it out. That's right, dig it out. Zhu Yao. The hell? You guys believe me just like that? What happened to your promised moral integrity? Where's your worldview? Don't think that just because you guys aren't human, you can abandon it so easily, hey. Zhu Yao seemed to be unable to support her dropped chin. The group of demonic beasts, however, walked towards the riverbank on their own and began to dig the sand. Furthermore, every single one of them looked as though they had some sort of deep grudge against the riverbank as they dug with all their might. Even that one called Chan Ning ran over with a leap. When he landed on the ground, he turned into a gigantic four-clawed demonic beast. Stretching out his two front claws, he began to dig the sand with all his might. As he killed, a cloud of dust rose into the air. The beach that was completely silent earlier was now filled with the figures of beasts. Don't dig too deep. It's fine if it's about the same as the bottom of the river. Zhu Yao could not help but give a reminder. What followed was a series of howls. Chapter 111. With the addition of so many high-ranked demonic beasts, after struggling for exactly 6 hours, when the sky was already bright, the entire riverbank in the forest disappeared. Zhu Yao instantly heaved a sigh of relief. The river water had a very strong corrosive effect towards mystic artifacts, and basically, they would lose their effects the moment they came into contact with the water. This was also the reason why this place was a magic forbidden zone. Now that there was no riverbank, if that jade fell, it would instantly be destroyed, and it was impossible for Mu Meiyin to possess those mystic artifacts. After completing the mission, Zhu Yao had everyone return to their own homes and find their own mothers. Although the demonic beasts looked unwilling, they still did not dare to disobey her orders. With every step they took, they would turn their heads and disperse, except for that 10th-ranked demonic beast called Chan Ning. From the expansion of the river earlier, it could be seen that Chan Ning should be the strongest amongst this group of demonic beasts. Although the demonic beasts might not submit to his teachings, they did not dare to provoke him easily. He said that he did not live in this forest, but after knowing the direction she was heading in, he insisted that he was heading in the same direction and shamelessly followed her. Yet, he just had to help her out earlier. Zhu Yao could not find the words to reject him and could only allow him to follow. Lord, actually, I have a little bit of your bloodline as well. Look at my claws, don't they look very similar to yours? As Chen Ning said that, he reached out a gigantic chicken claw towards her. The hell, how are they similar? You're a motherfucking chicken claw. I'm a 5-claw dragon, alright? Zhu Yao's expression turned as dark as ink. Turning her head, she glared at him and coldly mocked. If you turn into a human, Don't you look even more similar? When Chan Ning heard this, as though he had just regained his senses, he immediately returned to the image of that elegant white-clothed gentleman. He smiled brilliantly at her, and even intentionally reached out his front claws. No, now, it was his right hand. He looked to the right, and then to the left. He even secretly glanced at her hand, and chuckled while cupping his face. Lord has claws as well, and I have claws as well. We sure are fated. Fated your sister. Zhu Yao resisted the urge to slap him to death with her claws. Summoning her own flying sword, she then flew up. Chun Ning, like a qualified follower, immediately flew up as well. He was a demonic beast. There was no need for Zhu Yao to borrow a mystic artifact to fly in the first place, but she had already gotten used to it after so many years. Chun Ning silently looked at her. He chanted something and materialized a flying sword as well. Step on it. Seeing that Zhu Yao was ignoring him, he glanced at her again. The 3-feet-long green peak beneath his feet flashed and suddenly changed its shape. Its appearance was exactly the same as the one beneath Zhu Yao's feet. Furthermore, he straightened his back and adopted the exact same posture as her. That's enough. Zhu Yao almost spat out a mouthful of blood on his face. Was there a need to learn from her to this extent? Why don't you change your appearance to be exactly like her? Zhu Yao felt a little irritated. I need some time alone. Ignoring the actions of Chun Ning, who was a madman chasing after idols, he focused on controlling his sword, raising its speed to the maximum. Chun Ning also tactfully shut his mouth. They didn't speak on the way, and after an hour, when she was just about to fly out of this forest, Chun Ning suddenly spoke. There's actually a mortal down there. Zhu Yao was startled, as she had indeed sensed someone's presence below. However, it was still a distance away, and there seemed to be some rank 3 demonic beasts around. It was accompanied by a faint smell of blood. That person did not have the aura of spiritual qi, so he should be immortal. But this was the demonic beast forest. Why would there be a mortal who would take things this hard? Zhu Yao pondered for a moment, and in the end, she couldn't just leave him to die. Turning around, she flew in that direction. From afar, she saw 3 rank 3 little demonic beasts surrounding something. Initially, she wanted to summon a lightning bolt to scare the demonic beasts away. However, when she saw the little figure that was lying in a pool of blood, her heart instantly trembled. The hell? Why was it him? Zhu Yao was instantly enraged. The pressure of a demigod immediately pressed towards the 3 demonic beasts, instantly pressing them onto the ground. Yuing, wasn't he still sleeping in Celestial Indus sect? Why was he in this forest, hey? As though he had heard her voice, the unmoving bloody person who was lying on the ground earlier suddenly moved and raised his head. The moment he saw her flying down, his eyes, which were initially dead, still instantly shone. He actually began to crawl towards her. Zhu Yao landed next to him, and just when she was about to carry him up to inspect him, he took a step ahead of her. He grabbed onto the corner of her robe and held onto it tightly, as though he was unable to let go no matter what. Zhu Yao instantly felt a little sour in her heart. She hurriedly formed a hand seal to stop the blood on his body and carried him into her embrace. His injuries were very severe, and it seemed as though his entire body was filled with wounds. Several of the bones in his legs were even broken. She really did not know how such a small child was able to hold on. Zhu Yao was a little anxious. His aura was very weak, and although she had temporarily stopped his bleeding, she did not know how long he could last. If she wanted to treat his injuries, her blood vessels had to be unblocked. He himself did not have any cultivation and was unable to protect his heart vessels. She was afraid that he would not be able to hold on until she finished treating him. Yet, she had everything on her body, except for medicine. Lord, do you need medicinal pellets? Chun Ning suddenly popped his head out and looked at her with an expectant look. You have them? Zhu Yao turned her head in astonishment. Amen. Chun Ning nodded strongly and reported out a string of names. I have low-grade blood-staunching pellets, mid-grade blood-staunching pellets, and high-grade blood-staunching pellets. I also have low-grade, mid-grade, and low-grade essence pellets, body-strengthening pellets, foundation pellets, azoth pellets, and nascent pellets. There's a wide variety of them, and they have everything you need. The price is affordable, and I'm honest with you. Furthermore, as long as it's a low-grade pellet, I'll introduce a buy two, get one free discount, and the price is only, Lord, do you want them? Chunning changed his words at the last moment. I don't have any spirit stones. Zhu Yao's expression darkened. She had everything, but she didn't have any money. Chunning's face instantly flushed red. He glanced at her with an awkward look and weakly replied, It's just a few medicinal pellets. If Lord wants them, how can this subordinate accept your spirit stones? Didn't he say he was used to it earlier? Then give me a high-grade blood-staunching pellet, Zhu Yao said. Ning instantly retrieved a small bottle from the pouch next to him and passed it to her with extreme joy. Zhu Yao poured out a pellet that was suffused with a faint red glow. As expected, it was a high-grade blood-staunching pellet. She then returned the rest to Ning and said, I'll return the Spirit Empress to you in the future. Ning's expression instantly collapsed. Speaking too fast would kill a beast. He clearly just wanted to curry Lord's favor. Zhu Yao fed Yu Ying the blood-staunching pellet, and then used her spiritual energy to help him dissolve the medicinal effects, protecting his heart meridians. Only then did she undo the mystic art that she used to stop his bleeding earlier. Initially, she wanted to help him sit properly and help him treat his injuries. However, Yu Ying was nestled in her embrace, and no matter what, he refused to get up. He did not move, nor did he speak. He simply stared straight at her, and did not even blink, as though he was afraid that she would once again leave. Zhu Yao's heart ached for a moment. She repeatedly guaranteed that she would not leave, and then she simply allowed him to grab onto the corner of her robe before allowing him to sit up. Zhu Yao closed her eyes, circulated the spiritual energy in her body, and summoned her own sword intent. In an instant, a phoenix flew out from her body, and its entire body was filled with lightning sparks, as though it was formed from lightning sparks. Not even a moment later, the lightning sparks slowly turned blue, turning into the color of water. Furthermore, they had turned gentle as well, and completely did not have the slightest bit of that ferocious feeling from before. It did not fly into the sky. Instead, it spread open its gigantic wings and brought the child in front of it under its wings, while the wounds on Yu Ying's body were slowly healing. In the beginning, Ning was frightened by that huge bird, and his entire body could not help but tremble a little. Phoenix. That was an ancient divine beast just like a dragon. As a demonic beast, he naturally held fear and worship towards it. However, shouldn't Lord be a dragon? Why did the sword intent she cultivated look like a phoenix? Ning could not figure it out no matter how hard he thought about it. In the end, he concluded that as expected of Lord. So amazing. I worship her so much. I really want to hug her thighs. Zhu Yao spent an entire day and night before she was able to repair the meridians and wounds on the little ghost body. After he was done, the first thing he did was to crawl forward 2 steps. Then, he hugged onto her neck and leaned into her embrace, not moving an inch. Zhu Yao was a little speechless. His clothes were already tattered beyond recognition, and after the clothes that were stained with fresh blood dried, they looked very dirty. Zhu Yao sighed and cast a dirt removal incantation on him. Only then did he feel a little better. After pondering for a moment, she then took out a few smaller clothes from her ring. Back then, when she was still in version 2.0, her master had made them for her. After she grew up, she did not know why her master would still place them in her storage ring. She had never been willing to throw them away either. Though they were female clothes, at the very least, they were better than him wearing a set of tattered clothes. Zhu Yao once again spent some effort before she was able to teach Yu Ying to wear the new clothes. This time, he was very obedient. He no longer hugged onto her and refused to let go. However, during the entire process of wearing the clothes, he was still tightly grabbing onto the corner of her clothes. Zhu Yao looked at the set of tattered clothes in her hands, which was the uniform of Celestial Indus sect disciples that had been changed out, and frowned. She could guess that when the little ghost woke up, he did not see her, hence, he chased after her, and arrived at this forest. She used a deep slumber incantation, and this place was right at the foot of Celestial Indus Mountain. It could be seen that the earliest he left the mountain was the morning of the second day. Logically speaking, with so many disciples in Celestial Indus sect, if a child without any abilities ran out, there should be people who saw it. Even if no one saw it, after discovering it, they would definitely come looking for her. However, she had been sitting here for an entire day and night. Putting aside the disciples who came looking for a beating, Celestial Indus sect did not even have the slightest bit of reaction. This could only mean that they basically did not come looking for her, or they simply did not care about losing a disciple like this. He suddenly recalled the expression the Celestial Indus sect master had when he saw that Yu Ying possessed the Pinta spirit veins during the spirit veins test, especially when he saw that Yu Hanxin possessed the heavenly spirit veins. His expression was especially obvious. Most probably, he did not have any expectations for this child in the beginning, right? However, even if that was the case, a child had gone missing just like that. Putting aside the fact that he had just been born and was as blank as a piece of white paper, even a slightly more normal person would come looking for him, right? Celestial Indus sect's disregarding attitude was something that Zhu Yao, who had transmigrated from the modern era, was completely unable to accept. After considering for a moment, she decided to bring the child back to Azure Flight sect. At the very least, there was a bunch of radishes that were similar to him, and they could coexist peacefully. Zhu Yao summoned her flying sword, and the child was still like a little tail, tightly tugging onto the corner of her clothes as he followed behind. She did not know if it was because he had self-taught himself when he descended the mountain yesterday, but he already knew how to walk. Although his posture was a little strange and was a little stiff, he still stood very stably. There are also rare immortal herbs and all kinds of high-grade magic tools. As long as you have spirit stones, you can bid for them. Oh, so it was an auction, and it sounded rather high-end. Zhu Yao turned to look at Chun Ning. Even if you have something to do, you should go ahead. There's no need to send me off. Hearing that, Chun Ning's face completely collapsed. Just a moment ago, she looked as if there was no room for discussion. She turned her head and glared at the culprit, layers of murderous aura surging out. The golden core human cultivator broke out in cold sweat. He was just speaking the truth. Which part of his sentence had stepped on a landmine? Only then did he turn his head to look at the two people beside his master. That child, with one look, was obviously immortal. As for the woman next to him, he couldn't see through her cultivation. It seemed that she must be above the nascent soul realm. Seeing how Master valued her so much, could it be that she was a soul formation cultivator? He suddenly understood. It seemed like his master wanted the other party to stay. He quickly began to mend the pin after the sheep were lost. Fellow Taoist, the Treasure Inspection Conference is bustling with activity. Fellow Taoist, why don't we go take a look together? I still have something to do. Although she was a little curious, it was inconvenient to bring a little radish along. Chiwu Pavilion's main branch is right in front. It won't take up too much time. He continued to persuade. Furthermore, there are many precious items inside. Not only are there rare treasures, there are even ancient mystic art manuals. There's everything you need. Ancient mystic art manuals? Zhu Yao was startled for a moment, as she suddenly recalled the strange shadow behind Mu Meiyin. That's right. In Chiwu Pavilion's book depository, there are various ancient mystic art manuals. They have the most complete collection in the entire cultivation world. Mu Meiyin and Yu Hanxin's War of Attrition would officially begin 100 years later. Right now, the two of them were accumulating their strength, along with the occasional verbal quarrel. Zhu Yao was completely unable to interfere in these matters. After all, she couldn't possibly come all the way here to stop the fight, right? Furthermore, Zhu Yao had already made sufficient preparations. Hence, in these 100 years, she didn't know what she should do for a moment either. Why not investigate that shadow that gave her a bad feeling? Zhu Yao hesitated for a moment, as she looked towards Qian Ning at the side with an expectant look. Is the information in that whatever book depository is really that complete? Qian Ning hurriedly nodded heavily. As long as it's in this world, the book depository will have it. Especially in the top floor, There are even many hidden techniques and ancient books. Isn't the top floor a place that only master can enter? That Azoth core suddenly muttered. Ning immediately turned around and glared at him, before instantly shutting his mouth. Master is so scary today. For a moment, he was even more curious about the identity of the person next to him. Then let's go. Zhu Yao finally nodded, as she flew towards the direction where that Azoth core practitioner came from earlier. Lord, wait for me. Ning immediately followed after her joyfully. Though, the Azoth core practitioner at the back was stunned by his words. Lord? When did the word Lord appear above Master's head? He had been the manager of Chiwu Pavilion for so many years. How could he not know? Wasn't Chiwu Pavilion opened by Master? The manager indicated that his brain was insufficient. 10th-ranked demonic beasts could transform, and demonic beasts had always had a longer lifespan than human practitioners. However, ascension wasn't easy, hence, many demonic beasts would not easily ascend to the 11th rank before their lifespan ended, because the 11th rank meant that they had entered the ascension period, and ascension lightning tribulation might descend one day. It would be fine if they could ascend, but if they couldn't, their souls would be scattered. However, the lifespan of a 10th-ranked demonic beast was simply too long. If they stayed in the forest for too long, they would eventually get bored. Ning was a demonic beast that was bored to the point of pain. After he rose to the 10th ranked, he transformed and mixed into a human practitioner. He even had a very good business mind, as he opened a shop in a human practitioner's town. Because he was a high-ranked demonic beast, the spiritual grasses, spiritual medicines, rare treasures, and whatnot in the forest could be picked by him as he pleased. The other demonic beasts did not dare to have the slightest bit of objection either. Hence, this business naturally grew bigger and bigger. In a short 10,000 years, Chiwu Pavilion had become the largest chain shopping center in the cultivation world. When Zhu Yao arrived at the so-called Chiwu Pavilion, she was shocked. She had thought that it would at most be a place similar to a large supermarket. However, she realized that Chiwu Pavilion was actually referring to an entire street. On the street, there were talismans, mystic tools, herbs, pellets, and even pawn shops. Zhu Yao silently glanced at Ning, and in an instant, she felt as though she was looking at the owner of a fish pond. The entire street was contracted by him, and, from what that Azoth-ranked human practitioner said earlier, this was only a part of the main shop. In the other cultivation markets, there were other branches. Zhu Yao instantly felt a little frenzied. Ning, you're so successful as a beast. Have you ever thought about the feelings of humans? The so-called book depository was a small building with 5 floors. The area it occupied wasn't huge, and from afar, it looked very much like an ancient tower. However, when she entered, she realized that it was a completely different world inside. The inside was twice as big as it looked from the outside, and there were bookshelves everywhere. On the shelves, there were small compartments, and all of them were stored jade tablets. Ning passionately introduced every single floor. Usually, the first floor stored various miscellaneous records, the basics of various life skills such as artificing, talismans, and the various mystic arts that could be cultivated from essence to foundation. The second and third floors stored the mystic arts that could be cultivated from foundation to Azoth-rank practitioners, as well as the recipes for mid-rank life skills. The fourth floor was where only nascent soul practitioners and above could enter the high-rank skills section. Hence, the first floor was basically filled with a sea of people, while the second and third floors only had a few people. The fourth floor was even more so, extremely quiet. Most probably, there wouldn't even be 1 or 2 customers in a few years. As for the 5th floor, it was Ning's private place. According to the Azoth-ranked manager who came to receive them, no one had ever entered it before. And now, Ning was actually inviting Zhu Yao to climb up. Zhu Yao rolled her eyes at him, and immediately headed to the first floor. What she wanted to find was information regarding that shadow, and not some incredible mystic arts. Usually, when one cultivated to the demigod realm, they would already know all the mystic arts they should know, so naturally, they wouldn't be interested in these things. Furthermore, the things her master left for her, she couldn't even finish reading them, alright? Looking at the densely packed jade tablets, Zhu Yao was very glad that there was still something as useful as divine sense in this world, and she didn't have to read them one by one. Sweeping her divine sense across them, she basically knew a thing or two about the contents engraved in every single jade tablet. Zhu Yao walked back and forth on the first floor, specifically looking for those records of strange objects or the contents of rumors. However, she was completely unable to find the contents she wanted. She could only head up to the second floor. The books on the second floor were even simpler. Other than mystic arts, there were only recipes. Until an hour later, when she had basically scanned through all the jade tablets on the first to fourth floors, she still did not have the slightest bit of information regarding that shadow. Lord, why don't we head to the fifth floor to take a look? Chun Ning once again strongly suggested. That place is filled with the various lost mystic arts that I personally collected. There are also many remnant pages of ancient scrolls and secret records. Furthermore, there's definitely only one of them, and outsiders don't even know about them. Zhu Yao frowned, as she faintly felt that he was a little unreliable. The items here, the higher the floor, the lesser the contents. Especially the fourth floor, there were only a dozen or so jade tablets in total. It could be imagined that there wouldn't be many things on the fifth floor. Lord, since we're already here, why don't we take a look? Then let's take a look. Since they were already here, then Chan Ning joyfully led the way. Only then did Chun Ning happily lead the way at the front. The fifth floor was much smaller compared to the lower floor. It was simply a study room. The difference was, the ones on the lower floors were all jade tablets, while the ones on the upper floors were books or scrolls. However, the books were slightly yellowed. Although they were all protected by formations, they seemed to have existed for a very long time. Every single book here has been painstakingly collected. Chan Ning had a complacent look on his face as he proudly introduced. Every single book has its own story, and many of them are even brought out from some ancient ruins that have already disappeared. They have already been lost for a very long time, and are extremely precious. Chapter 113. Zhu Yao curiously picked up a book with a blue cover, and on top of it was written a few majestic words, strange objects of the 5 provinces. Zhu Yao's eyes shone, as she casually flipped it open, revealing a lifelike drawing of a human body. Her face instantly darkened. Are you certain? Of course. Chun Ning became even more cocky as he stroked those book covers. These are treasures among treasures, you know. This one as well? Zhu Yao raised the 5 provinces strange objects record. Mama's egg, you think this daddy here can't tell that this is a pornography book just because you changed your avatar? Chun Ning was startled. Earlier, he still had a complacent look, but in an instant, he exploded into a tomato. That wasn't placed here by me. Chun Ning snatched the book from her hands and covered up. Who placed this in here? It's too unstylish. It's simply an insult to the culture. Too much. So much, if you have the guts, don't stuff it into your clothes. Zhu Yao rolled her eyes, turned her head, and continued to look at the other books. She saw a completely pitch-black scroll, and some of the words on it were already blurry. She could faintly see the word, era. What's this? Zhu Yao curiously picked it up. Most of the books here were either white scrolls or blue ones. Only this scroll was black. Chan Ning patted the 5 provinces strange objects record on his chest. After confirming that he had placed it properly, he glanced at the scroll in her hands. That's an ancient record of events. It doesn't have much use, it merely records some events that happened a long time ago. However, that scroll is made from exquisite jade silk and is extremely precious. Zhu Yao opened the scroll and realized that what was recorded inside were not ancient words, but various diagrams. After a closer look, it was a blessed land of celestial mountains. However, there were also various drawings. There were demonic beasts that she had never seen before. Some of these demonic beasts were as big as mountains, while some were as small as snakes and insects. The further she went, the uglier those demonic beasts became. Zhu Yao continued reading with the mood of wondering just how ugly the last one would be, only to realize that the last one was dyed black by ink. The hell? This feeling of seeing the ending right in front of her eyes, only to realize that the author had given up, was simply too awesome. Zhu Yao instantly had the mood to tear this scroll apart. Unfortunately, this scroll was too hard, and it seemed as though it was reinforced by some sort of formation. He did not tear it. She felt a knot in her heart, but the corner of her clothes suddenly tightened. She looked down and found that Yuhan, who had been obediently following her, was nodding her head. It seemed that she was sleepy. Zhu Yao squatted down. She opened her hand to him. Yu Ying was stunned for a moment. His small face was still wooden, but he quickly reacted. He took a step forward and hugged her neck. Zhu Yao carried him up and stroked his little head. Sleep. Only then did his little body relax, and he fell into a deep sleep. Zhu Yao sighed. Yu Ying, this child, was a little too obedient. He did not make a fuss, nor did he say anything. Sometimes, when he was quiet, people would subconsciously forget his existence. Lord, do you still want to look at these? Chun Ning suddenly darted out. He was holding a large pile of ancient scrolls in his hands, and his face was full of flattery. They are all part of my collection. Zhu Yao glanced at his bulging chest. She really did not have much interest in his collection. No need, I have to go. Chan Ning's face instantly collapsed, and he looked at her with a face full of resentment. You really don't want a single one? The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She had no choice but to obediently pick up that black ancient scroll from earlier. I'll take this then? Chun Ning's eyes instantly shone as he nodded. I still have matters to attend to. I'll be leaving first. It wasn't good for demonic beasts to be too passionate. Zhu Yao hugged Yu Ying tightly and left Chiwu Pavilion. Flying on her sword, she headed towards Azure Flight. A few minutes later, why are you following me? Zhu Yao looked at the figure behind her with a headache. Chun Ning loudly replied, this subordinate swears to follow Lord until death. Follow your sister. This daddy here doesn't want to follow her. Honestly speaking, you're determined to stick to me, right? Zhu Yao did not know to what extent the so-called dragon race's bloodline had affected demonic beasts. Why was it that whenever she released her dragon's might, she would provoke a demonic beast that refused to let go? She couldn't beat him away, and she couldn't scold him. No matter how ugly her words were, he could still chuckle and reply, Lord is right. Tell him to scram. He could really roll on the ground, and then continue to follow her. Zhu Yao had no choice but to have Chen Ning follow her all the way to Azure Flight. In just a few short years, Azure Flight had already completely changed. The place that was destroyed by the group of heretic practitioners to the point that it looked like a wasteland back then had a completely different scenery now. Although traces of repair could still be seen everywhere, the entire place was emitting out vitality. She did not know if Sesame had sensed her presence, but when Zhu Yao arrived at the mountain peak, all of the 83 little radishes, as well as Yu Yao and Sesame, were already standing in an orderly manner at the plaza in front of the hall, waiting for her. We greet Sect Master. An orderly and clear voice resounded as they bowed towards her in unison. Good. Zhu Yao waved her hands. She sized up this group of little radishes. No, they could no longer be called little radishes. Evidently, every single one of them had grown up by a size, and the youngest was at least 10 years old. Master. Yu Yao was undoubtedly the happiest one, as she hurriedly walked forward. A white figure flashed and pounced straight towards Zhu Yao. Mistress Meow. Zhu Yao dodged to the side. With a plop, Sesame's face landed on the ground. Yet, it crawled up without a care and hugged onto her leg. Mistress, Beastie missed you so much. Scram. Zhu Yao struggled to pull her leg out, yet she was unable to do so no matter what. The hell, Sesame, do you have to be so cheap every time you appear? Just as Zhu Yao was about to use some forceful methods, Yu Ying, who was in her embrace, suddenly woke up. He rubbed his eyes, and his leg moved, as though he wanted to get down. Zhu Yao subconsciously let go. Hence, with a push of his leg, he directly stepped on Sesame's face. Sesame immediately let go, and while holding onto his face, which was imprinted with 2 footprints, he squatted at the side and began to whimper. Well done. Zhu Yao gave little Yu Ying a thumbs up. However, he simply looked at her blankly, and then he automatically tugged onto the corner of her robe. Master, these two are? Yu Yao looked at the two people behind her, yet she ignored Elder Sesame's embarrassing actions. That's right, she was already used to it. We will talk about this later. Zhu Yao greeted the little radishes one by one and casually inspected everyone's homework. Probably because she was present this time, the little radishes fought especially hard. Zhu Yao's trip back to Celestial Indus sect had actually not even lasted for 10 days. Including Wu Song, 5 of them had already built their foundation, and 10 of them were at the 10th level of essence. It seemed like in less than 2 years, more than half of the people here would be able to build their foundation. It seemed like the method of group training was really feasible. Not only was it useful in actual combat, it was extremely useful even in raising cultivation. Although everyone's cultivation rose at different speeds, the difference between the people in the same group was not huge. After Zhu Yao finished inspecting everyone's homework, she casually suggested a few modified plans, and the sky had already darkened. After dispersing everyone, she then called Wu Song and Yu Yao into the main hall. She simply introduced Yu Ying and Chan Ning to the two of them. She did not reveal Chan Ning's identity as a demonic beast, and merely briefly mentioned his identity as a merchant. However, this matter naturally could not be hidden from Sesame. He was a demonic beast in the first place, and had long seen through his identity with a single glance. Adding that they were both at the 10th rank, he found him even more unpleasant to the eye. Ever since they were at the plaza earlier, the two of them had been looking at each other for a long time. Zhu Yao could even faintly see the sparks between their gazes. Zhu Yao sighed. Compared to this pair, Wu Song and Yu Yao at the side could basically be said to be as gentle as water, with endless friendship. Especially when they looked at each other from time to time. One was filled with tenderness, while the other was filled with shyness. It could basically poke the eyes of a single dog blind. A single dog, Zhu Yao, silently lowered her head to look at Yu Ying, who had already fallen asleep in her embrace. All right, she could barely be considered as a pair. She missed her master so much. You two must be tired as well. You can leave now. Don't come and hurt a single dog with a long-distance, one-sided love. Yu Yao, pack up. We will return to Ancient Hill Sect tomorrow. Yu Yao was startled. Her face, which was still flushed earlier, instantly paled a little. Wu Song exchanged glances with her, and then stood up. Sect Master, this disciple still has many areas that he does not understand on the path of cultivation, and requires Senior Martial Sister's guidance. Why not? Why not? Zhu Yao chuckled. Why not what? Wu Song did not dare to look at her eyes a little, and after a while, he stuttered. Why not stay for a few more days, so that I can guide the disciples? Zhu Yao glanced at him. The hell? You want to snatch my disciple? How can it be that easy? Azure Flight Sect has just been established, and there are many matters to attend to. I only have this one precious disciple. I can't bear to let her suffer. Master, I'm not afraid of suffering. Yu Yao hurriedly expressed. I will take good care of Senior Martial Sister. Wu Song immediately spoke up as well. How are you going to take care of her? For how long? Zhu Yao continued to ask. Naturally, as long as Senior Martial Sister is willing to stay, I will take care of her. Never leave? Naturally. All right. Zhu Yao heavily patted on his shoulders. I'll leave my disciple to you then. I have high hopes for you, you know? All right, prepare a little more betrothal gifts. Wu Song was startled, and only then did he understand what she meant. His face instantly flushed red, and he secretly glanced at Yu Yao. Seeing that her face was even redder than his, he then revealed a silly smile. Master! Yu Yao pretended to be angry as she glared at her. Yo, you're getting shy again at a time like this. If you have the ability, don't laugh. I'm just speaking the truth. The person Wu Song is going to marry is the daughter of the Ancient Hill Sect Master. You have to at least show some sincerity, right? Master. Little Radish was furious. All right, we'll talk about this in the future. Zhu Yao curled her lips. At the very least, she had to give Wu Song some time to save up, right? She wondered how ZMO would react when he finds out about this news. Just thinking about it made her a little excited. After that, she handed over the matters that had piled up in the sect for the past few days. and had the two of them arrange Chun Ning's residence. Chapter 114. Sesame's eyes, which was just about to turn around, instantly shone, as suspicious tears welled up in his eyes. "Mistress, I knew that you still love me. It's best that you leave." Meow. Sesame had already hugged her thigh with an excited look. After being kicked away, he continued to hug her back. Only when he could no longer see the three of them did he cry out, "Mistress, how can you be so heartless, so heartless? How can you keep other beasts other than Sesame? Who did I keep?" You didn't keep that 10th-ranked beast? Keep your sister." Why did he sound as though he was taking in a concubine? Then why did Mistress bring him back? Zhu Yao actually had her own plans for bringing Chun Ning along. It wasn't easy to raise a sect, especially for someone like her who was overflowing with wealth, yet had no money. Although Chan Ning was a demonic beast who asked him to be rich, building a good relationship and pulling in some sponsors or whatnot was a pretty good choice too. Hence, the reason for everything was, because I'm poor. "Sesame, get up, I have something to ask you." Sesame's habit of hugging someone's thighs, when could it change? Zhu Yao first cast a deep sleep mystic art on Yu Ying, and then cast an isolation formation in the Great Hall. "Sesame, do you know of any mystic arts or mystic treasures that exist in the form of a shadow?" Even Chiwu Pavilion was unable to find any information regarding that shadow. Most probably, even if she returned to Ancient Hill Sect, she wouldn't be able to find anything. Although Sesame was a demonic beast, after all, it descended from the higher realm, so it knew more things. "Shadow?" Sesame was startled. "What kind of shadow?" "It will possess a human's body, and at first glance, it looks a little like a ghost." Zhu Yao recalled the appearance of that shadow. However, its facial features are not as clear as a ghost's. It's like a human's shadow and a companion to a human's body. Sesame sensed the cautiousness in her words and lowered his head to ponder for a moment. "I have never heard of a shadow that can appear like this. I have never heard of such a mystic art either. Usually, mystic arts that exist for a long period of time would always focus on concealment. If a human figure were to appear, then the mystic arts would be considered as inferior. What if the other party can't see it?" That shadow would often lie next to Mu Meiyin's ears, and it seemed to be communicating with her. However, when someone was speaking, a human's instinctive reaction would subconsciously look towards the speaker, but Mu Meiyin didn't. It seemed that even she couldn't see the black shadow. The others didn't seem to have any reaction, except for her. Could there be some kind of possession spell? Furthermore, the black shadow was extremely vigilant and could even easily detect a soul formation cultivator. That black shadow seems to have some kind of power that I find very strange. Logically speaking, she had paid so much attention at that time. Even a late-stage soul formation cultivator might not be able to see her, but that black shadow did. Furthermore, she was injured just by looking back at her. Sesame suddenly widened its eyes, and its face paled a little. "Unless it's someone who has already ascended." Zhu Yao was startled. "You're saying someone descended to the lower realm?" Sesame nodded, just as he was about to say something. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind swept past. Zhu Yao felt a chill on her back, and out of reflex, she immediately summoned a defensive barrier. However, he was forced back over 100 feet by a powerful force. Zhu Yao simply felt her chest churning. The strong smell of blood surged up, and she used all her strength to suppress it. A burst of eerie laughter rang out in the room. It was so eerie that even the temperature dropped by several degrees. "Who's there?" Sesame instantly reverted to his original form and instantly filled up half of the Great Hall. However, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find the source of that sudden energy earlier. He couldn't see it, but Zhu Yao could. At the center of the Great Hall, a person was standing there. No, that couldn't be considered a person. It was just a black shadow. That black shadow was like a water ripple, swaying about. However, it was emitting out a chilling aura. Even though she was so far away, she could still feel a hint of coldness seeping into her bones. This was definitely the black shadow that followed beside Mu Meiyin. But why did he appear here? And the moment he arrived, he immediately attacked. Sesame was still swaying about in the great hall, attempting to find a target to attack. That black shadow slightly raised his head. Although he couldn't see his expression, Zhu Yao could sense that he was definitely looking at her with a mocking expression. Zhu Yao did not hesitate. She immediately summoned her own sword intent, circulated all the spiritual energy in her body, and attacked the black shadow at the center. The lightning phoenix she summoned carried the pressure of a demigod as it flew over. She was unable to see through this black shadow's strength, so she could only kill it with a single strike. The entire great hall instantly collapsed, and a huge crack appeared where the phoenix passed by. It instantly pierced through that black shadow. However, Zhu Yao was suddenly startled for a moment. She did not feel like she had hit it in the slightest. That black shadow did not have a physical body. What was going on? Ho ho ho! That strange laughter once again resounded. At the place where the black shadow disappeared earlier, a black substance was currently gathering, and it immediately returned to that black shadow. The hell? Just what in the world is this? Before Zhu Yao could even recall her own sword intent, that black shadow lightly swayed and appeared in front of her. Zhu Yao had no choice but to once again raise her defensive barrier. Yet, she was completely unable to block his attack, and she just had to carry Yu Ying in her embrace. She could only turn her body to protect Yu Ying in time, and was instantly struck on her back by the black shadow. The true energy in her dantian instantly dispersed and could no longer be gathered. Yu Ying woke up as well. As though he had sensed the current situation as well, his little face was filled with panic. His little hand touched Zhu Yao's pale face. Ah. He still couldn't speak. Roar Sesame reacted as well. Guessing the opponent's position, it immediately attacked a few feet in front of Zhu Yao. However, with a wave of the black shadow's hand, it was instantly sent flying. The black shadow was still letting out that strange and horrifying laughter. As though it was curious, it moved closer and sized Zhu Yao up. As I thought, you can see me? Ho ho ho. Then, I can't let you live. Zhu Yao wanted to stand up again, but with her dantian destroyed, she was completely unable to gather even the slightest bit of mystic energy. She watched as that black shadow once again raised his hand. Zhu Yao even wanted to curse out at him. The hell? Just what kind of grudge do I have against you? Why must I be killed just because I can see you? She could no longer suppress the sweetness in her chest, as she puked out a mouthful of blood. Mama's egg, even if I'm on line 5-0, this old lady will still spit on your face before I go offline. Zhu Yao believed that with this attack, she would definitely not be able to live. She was not afraid of death, but she did not know if this black shadow was here to kill her, or if he was going to implicate the other people in Azure Flight. If she were to implicate those 80 or so radishes because of this, her conscience would never be able to rest for the rest of her life. Just as the black shadow was about to approach her and was about to touch her, however, a blinding golden light suddenly emitted out from her bosom, forcing that black shadow to take a few steps back. What's this? That black shadow seemed to be frightened as well. That light, however, grew even brighter, and in an instant, it covered the entire collapsed great hall. Even that black shadow was swallowed by the light as well. Zhu Yao could not help but close her eyes from the piercing light. However, at the moment she lowered her head to look, she saw the glowing object in her bosom. It was the black scroll she took from Chan Ning's place. Under the intense light, Zhu Yao could not help but close her eyes. After a while, she finally recovered. Slowly, she opened her eyes. However, she realized that they had actually changed the map and had arrived at a foreign place. This seemed to be a deep mountain, and in the surroundings were towering trees that she had never seen before. They were so tall that they reached the clouds. Sesame. Zhu Yao looked around for a moment, only to realize that it was currently lying at a place not far away from her. Currently adapting to the current light, she slowly stood up. A teleportation formation? A cold and sinister voice resounded. The hell? It's that black shadow again. Why is it everywhere? You won't be able to escape. Today, you must die. The black shadow once again floated up. Earlier, its body, which had dissipated a little due to the golden light, slowly gathered once again. As though it was absorbing the surrounding spiritual energy, its body was becoming more and more corporeal. Raising one of his hands, a faint purple light was currently gathering in his hand. Sesame leaped up as well. Although it could not see the black shadow, it could roughly guess its direction from such an obvious killing intent. However, Zhu Yao could feel the pressure being emitted out from the purple light, causing her to be completely powerless to resist. However, Zhu Yao could feel the pressure being emitted out from the purple light, causing her to be completely powerless to resist. Even after changing the map, she was still unable to escape the fate of being killed. If she had known, she would have sent Yuing out. This was the first time Zhu Yao felt that her cultivation speed was too slow, to the point where she was completely powerless to resist. Just as the purple light was about to hit her, suddenly, she heard a shrill howl. That howl was extremely loud, and every single howl seemed to be able to pierce through her eardrums. Zhu Yao's ears were ringing from that howl. Out of nowhere, a snake-shaped demonic beast appeared. Opening its gigantic mouth that was filled with sharp teeth, it bit towards the black shadow. Its speed was so fast that it could not be seen. The black shadow did not seem to have guessed that there would be a demonic beast in this place either, as it hurriedly dodged and retreated several meters away. However, a portion of its body was still shattered by that demonic beast. The purple light in the black shadow's hand was coincidentally thrown towards that snake. Before that purple light could even land on that snake-shaped demonic beast, that demonic beast suddenly opened its mouth wide and swallowed that extremely powerful-looking ball of light. And then it burped. Zhu Yao and her little companions were all dumbfounded. Even that black shadow was stunned, as though the word unscientific had already appeared on its face. Just what the hell is this demonic beast? Roar! That snake beast once again let out a long howl. As though it was addicted to eating that purple light, it once again began to chase after the black shadow and attack it. The black shadow could only continue to dodge, yet his mystic arts seemed to be completely ineffective against that demonic beast. It was being chased to the point of jumping up and down. Zhu Yao silently felt that it was time for her to retreat for a moment. Carrying Yu Ying, she planned to flee. However, she suddenly heard another loud roar. Another demonic beast suddenly flew over from the sky. This demonic beast was terrifyingly huge, and its wings were actually just a white skeleton. Strangely, it was still flying very stably. Most likely, it was attracted by the sounds of battle, as it charged straight towards the direction of the snake beast and the black shadow. The earth quaked and the mountains shook, and the sky was in full swing. Zhu Yao and the other two were the fish in the pond that were affected. They could only dodge the gigantic trees and flying rocks that were knocked down by them in all directions. Chapter 115. However, this was not the end. After attracting the second one, naturally, there would be a third, fourth, and fifth one. Various demonic beasts gathered from all directions. It was as though they had their eyes on the fat piece of meat that was the shadow. Wave after wave of attacks began. Some attacked the shadow, while others began to kill each other. Zhu Yao suddenly had the illusion of demonic beasts attacking a city. She had never seen a single one of these demonic beasts before. She was certain that no one in the entire cultivation world had ever seen such demonic beasts before, and she was basically unable to differentiate the ranks of these demonic beasts. Clearly, they did not have the slightest bit of pressure, yet they were terrifyingly strong. If any one of them were to land in the cultivation world, it would definitely be an existence that could instantly kill everything. Even someone as strong as the shadow clearly could not defeat a group of demonic beasts like this. Even dodging became strenuous, and his figure was already becoming fainter from being bitten. However, the number of demonic beasts in the surroundings was increasing. In the beginning, Zhu Yao tried her best to hide and find a place to slip away. However, no matter how she retreated, she was unable to escape from the battlefield. When she finally walked far enough, she bumped into a demonic beast that had just been lured over. That beast was as sturdy as a small mountain, and its entire body was covered in rocks, making it look like a stone beast. A pair of flashing red eyes was staring straight at her. Zhu Yao suddenly had a bad premonition. If even that shadow could not defeat these demonic beasts, then she was definitely trash. Mistress, hurry, hurry, release your aura. Sesame turned to remind her. Oh right, she was a dragon. Demonic beasts had an instinctive fear towards her. Zhu Yao did not hesitate. Enduring the immense pain in her chest, she released her dragon's aura with all her might and expanded it to the limit. In an instant, it was as though the entire place had been muted. All the sounds stopped. Even the demonic beasts that were fighting intensely with the shadow had strangely stopped as well. Zhu Yao simply felt a chill down her spine, as though she had heard the sound of winning a prize. This reaction wasn't right. Roar and earth-shattering roar resounded. The demonic beasts that were still ganging up on the shadow earlier suddenly changed their target and attacked her. The hell? What happened to the promised bloodline suppression? Zhu Yao leaped onto Sesame's back and shouted out, "Run!" What happened to the most basic trust between humans and beasts? Release your dragon's aura. Sesame's wings flapped, and like an arrow, it flew with all its might. Only an afterimage was left in the surroundings. The demonic beasts reacted as well, and various roars sounded. If it was in the past, she would not mind such a tiny bit of backlash. However, she was already injured in the first place, and she still forcefully activated the formation. The backlash was instantly magnified by countless of times. She felt as though her internal organs were being sliced by blades, and her blood was like an open tap. She puked out a few mouthfuls. Even her divine sense was beginning to feel a piercing pain. Yuing crawled to her side and anxiously tugged on her sleeves. Mistress. Sesame returned to his human form as well and crouched down to support her. Zhu Yao took a few deep breaths before she regained her senses. She reached out her hand to stroke Yu Ying's head and gave him a comforting gaze. Where are we right now? Sesame looked around. I can no longer sense the demonic beast horde from earlier. Most likely, we have already been transported to a very far place. Sesame? Those demonic beasts, do you recognize them? Sesame shook his head. Sesame has never seen such demonic beasts, and I have never heard anyone mention them either. Just what kind of place is this? She wanted to know just what kind of place this was as well. Why did they end up here after that golden light? Oh, right. Earlier, she seemed to have seen that the light was emitted from that black scroll. Zhu Yao subconsciously reached into her bosom, only to realize that the scroll had long disappeared without a trace. Could it be, we have most likely entered the world within that scroll? Chen Ning had mentioned before that this was an ancient scroll, and the demonic beasts that had long gone extinct were all drawn on it. In the beginning, she had even thought that this scroll was just a normal encyclopedia of animals, though it was an ancient version. However, evidently, that scroll had only suddenly glowed after coming into contact with her blood. It teleported them here. In that case, it was basically not a scientific encyclopedia. It was very likely that it was a sealed scroll, and those demonic beasts were precisely sealed in this world. Zhu Yao roughly explained the matter regarding the scroll to Sesame. It seems like the seal on this scroll is extremely strong. Earlier, that formation of hers was able to slice through space. However, they were still in this world. It seemed like the method of shattering space was unable to return to the original world as well. Sesame frowned as well. Then how do we leave this place? Zhu Yao lowered her head and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, she recalled the pitch-black ink stain at the end of the scroll. Let's look at the deepest part of this world. There might still be a chance of survival. I will depart right now. This place was simply too dangerous. Any random demonic beast would be enough to make them suffer. Sesame nodded, and then returned to his original form, concealing his own presence. He signaled for Zhu Yao and Yu Ying to climb up. Just as it was about to take off, suddenly, a sharp roar that could make one's scalp go numb resounded. The hell, it's here again. Chasing behind them was a gigantic bird that was enveloped in black flames. Sesame's original form was already considered huge. However, that bird's size was more than 10 times that of Sesame. With a single glance, it was about to cover half of the sky. Furthermore, that bird's roar was especially unique. Every single roar felt as though 10,000 sharp blades were slashing towards them. Zhu Yao herself was nearly unable to hold on, and had no choice but to seal Yu Ying's 5 senses, preventing him from being injured by the roar. Although that bird's flying speed was not fast, due to its huge size, a single flap of its wings would cause a powerful air current. Although they were running at the front, they would still be affected by the air current. This caused their speed to slow down. Sesame, use spiritual energy to envelop your entire body. You won't be affected by the air current. When Sesame heard this, he immediately did as he was told. As expected, after he blocked off the surrounding air current, he was no longer affected by that gigantic bird. His speed had increased by a lot, and he was getting further and further away from that gigantic bird. That demonic beast seemed to have sensed this, as its roar became even more urgent. Suddenly, it opened its long mouth, and lightning sparks could be seen flashing within. A ball of white lightning sparks grew larger and larger. It's lightning. Sesame was anxious as well. No one had expected that the bird would actually be of the lightning attribute. Other than lightning beasts, there were actually lightning attribute demonic beasts in this world. This was illogical. Lightning innately countered demonic beasts. No matter how strong Sesame's body was, it would not be able to withstand a lightning strike from a demonic beast that was of a higher rank than it. He could not help but even his voice began to tremble. That bird had already spat out that ball of lightning, and it was flying straight towards them. Mistress! In a moment of desperation, Zhu Yao had no choice but to instantly transform into her dragon form and hook onto Sesame with her tail. Using her fastest speed, she madly flew upwards. This was definitely a subconscious action of Zhu Yao's. However, she never expected that her dragon form's flying speed would actually be this fast. In just a blink of an eye, she had already shaken off that gigantic bird. There are gains and there are losses. After returning to her dragon form, she could no longer hide her dragon might and arrogantly announced her existence. Hence, all the demonic beasts sensed it. Hence, there were even more demonic beasts chasing after them. Mama's egg. Sesame, protect Yu Ying. Zhu Yao gritted her teeth. Right now, she could only desperately flee. She hoped that if they caught up to her, she would be able to fly out in time. This was the first time Zhu Yao was using her dragon form to fly, and her entire body was filled with an indescribable sense of carefreeness. That was a connection that originated from her bloodline, and even her injuries seemed to have eased a little. Her speed grew even faster, and the surrounding scenery was only left with streaks of afterimages. It was as though she was born to fly amongst the clouds. After flying for an unknown period of time, the rising and falling roars behind her seemed to have begun to slowly weaken. Zhu Yao felt a surge of excitement in the depths of her heart. This was effective. It seemed like she would be able to shake off that group of demonic beasts in no time. As expected, the heavens would never bar one's way. The heavens would never bar one's way, my ass. Zhu Yao stopped at the side of the pitch-black sky, and in an instant, she had the urge to ruthlessly smash the heavens onto the ground. Chapter 116. Mama's Egg. She finally knew why those demonic beasts did not chase after them. This was basically not the exit. This was not the first time she saw this pitch-black scene from top to bottom. This was clearly the severed grounds, the place where she was forcefully resurrected back when she was in Taesioluk. In other words, this was the end of this world. Her heart squeezed. Mistress? Sesame was dumbfounded as well. Taking a deep breath, he said, "Let's head back first." They had no choice but to find another way out. Zhu Yao wanted to cry, but no tears came out. She turned around and flew towards the direction they came from. However, she suddenly felt an immense pressure assaulting them, instantly pressing the three of them down from the sky. The hell? Zhu Yao only had the time to curse out before she was instantly pressed onto the ground. The darkness, which was still quiet earlier, as though it had suddenly opened its mouth, crazily moving towards them. Everything it passed by, was devoured by the darkness, and then disappeared into the darkness. The trees, the ground, and even the air were disappearing bit by bit. The three of them were basically unable to dodge in time. They were too close, and the pressure here was too great. They were basically unable to resist at all. This was not something that could be described by mere pressure. The severed grounds was the end of the world, and within it were the laws of the heavenly Tao. As long as one was in this world, they would definitely be suppressed. Just as the darkness was about to extend to the tip of her tail, and Sesame was puking out blood from the suppression, Yu Ying had long fainted. This couldn't go on. She could keep Sesame in her divine sense, but Yu Ying was a human, and a 5-year-old child at that. It was because of her that he came here. If he was devoured, he would definitely die. He had just arrived in this world, and he did not know anything. She had not even taught him how to speak, and he was as blank as a piece of paper. How could he die here? Zhu Yao clenched her claws. She once again returned to her human form. She did not know if it was because her size had shrunk, but the pressure instantly lessened by a lot. However, she was still unable to stand up. She could only crawl over bit by bit and carry Yu Ying, who was on the ground. Sesame, return to your human form. Sesame was startled for a moment, before returning to that baby-faced youth as well, and sat next to her. The darkness had already begun to crawl onto her body. Zhu Yao gritted her teeth. Right now, she had no other choice but to risk it. She instantly released all of her divine sense, forming a translucent barrier of light that enveloped the three of them. It was protected inside. The black curtain had already swallowed them whole. She could feel the pain of her divine sense being torn apart. It was as if the pain had penetrated into her soul and could make her collapse at any moment. However, she did not dare to remove the light curtain, no matter how unbearable the pain was. She could only silently tell herself in her heart that she could not retreat. He could not retreat. The pain continued to deepen, and slowly, he began to become numb. Even his consciousness began to blur. After an unknown amount of time, she fell into a state of chaos. Zhu Yao smelled a floral fragrance. It was clear and light, and it smelled especially nice. She instantly opened her eyes and found herself lying on a simple wooden bed. This should be a small house. It was so simple that it only had one piece of wood. Her body was covered with a piece of silvery veil. She felt it with her hand. It was as smooth as water. Zhu Yao was stunned for 2 seconds. He looked down at his brand-new clothes, which were actually a tender pink. It was somewhat familiar. She hadn't worn this color in years. He took a deep breath, but he didn't feel any discomfort. Even his dantian was faintly filled with spiritual qi. Zhu Yao got off the bed and walked out of the house. She realized that in front of her was a boundless peach garden. The fragrance she smelled earlier was from peach blossoms. It was currently the season of blooming, and the entire place was filled with peach blossoms. As the wind blew, the entire sky was filled with peach blossoms. Zhu Yao could not help but walk into the peach forest. Just as she took a few steps, a figure appeared in front of her. He stood with his back facing her. His clothes were as white as snow, without a single speck of dust. One of his hands was placed behind his back, and his fingertips were long and slender, as though they were made of fine jade. One could not help but want to play with them in their hands. Sensing the commotion behind him, he slowly turned around. That face that entered her eyes seemed to be the most perfect masterpiece of the heavens. Every single stroke was meticulously drawn, and if there was more, it would be full, and if there was less, it would be incomplete. His expression was calm, and his thin lips were lightly pursed. Even if he did not say anything, he was still so beautiful that it made people want to contribute everything to him. This was the first time Zhu Yao knew that a person could be this beautiful. Her heart was in turmoil, and she could not help but gently raise the corner of her lips. She definitely had to strike up a conversation with such a peerlessly beautiful man. Great hero, do you lack a leg accessory? The man's brows slightly furrowed, and his expression turned a little colder. He seriously said, "Speak human language. I want to hug your thigh." He was startled for a moment, as though he was hesitating for a moment, and then, slowly, he stretched out a leg. Hug. Zhu Yao. All right. This kind of one-of-a-kind adorkable stupidity. He was definitely her master. That's right. Master. Recalling the repercussions of her reincarnation, Zhu Yao circulated her spiritual energy. She realized that although it wasn't very abundant, at the very least, there was still spiritual energy. She didn't die. Then what about Sesame and Yu Ying? Yu Yin frowned, as though he was dissatisfied with how anxious she was about outsiders. He glanced at the other straw cottage nearby. Zhu Yao sent her divine sense over, and as expected, she realized Sesame and Yu Ying were currently lying on the wooden bed in the house, as though they had fallen into a deep sleep. She instantly heaved a sigh of relief. Master, how did you find me? Yu Yin took out a black ancient scroll and lightly explained. You have my divine sense imprint on you. After I descended to the lower realm, I realized you were sealed in this item, so I casually pulled you out. The seal on the scroll was very strong, and he had spent quite a bit of effort before he managed to pull her out. However, he never expected that he would be able to see her dying look. Initially, he had thought that with her demigod cultivation level, no one in the lower realm could harm her, so he ascended with a peace of mind. However, this stupid disciple of his, if he did not keep a close eye on her, she would always court death. He felt that he had to keep a closer eye on her. This time, I'm here to bring you to the higher realm. Yu Yin voiced out his plans. Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. But I'm only an early-stage demigod. Ascending now? Was that even logical? You're still aware that you're only a demigod? Yu Yin slightly narrowed his eyes and revealed a disdainful expression. Initially, I had thought that with your aptitude, it would at most take 2,000 years for you to ascend from a demigod. But now, more than 1,000 years have passed, yet, you're still stuck at the early-stage demigod level. He had been on tenterhooks in the sky, bitterly waiting for such a long time, afraid that this stupid disciple of his would do something stupid again. As a last resort, he descended to the lower realm, only to realize that she basically did not have the intention to ascend. Wait a minute. The old sack. 1,000 years? How is that possible? She did not learn mathematics wrongly, right? Clearly, only 20 years had passed since her master ascended. At most 30 years. Then just where did she calculate the time of 1,000 years? 1,376 years. 5 months and 3 days. He had already kindly removed the odd number. Zhu Yao was a little confused for a moment. Logically speaking, even if she was heavily injured, she shouldn't need that much time to recover. Unless, Zhu Yao lowered her head to look at the scroll in Yu Yan's hands. Unless the flow of time in the scroll was different from the flow of time in the outside world. Chapter 117. Yu Yin glanced at the scroll in his hand, and only after a while did he reply. The seal on this scroll is from a very long time ago. I can only roughly tell that it's an incantation used to seal demonic beings. It's similar to a mustard seed space, but it also contains a hint of the law of reincarnation. Yu Yin paused for a moment. As though he had thought of something, he turned to look at his disciple. Zhu Yao instantly felt as though a bunch of grass mud horses were whizzing through her mind. That's right. I stayed in there for a day, but 1,000 years have passed since I came out. That scroll actually contained a difference of more than 1,000 years. Zhu Yao told Zhu Yao everything that happened inside. Yu Yan's brows furrowed, and his expression became much sterner as well. In that case, this scroll must have originated from the hands of the primordial god race. What's sealed inside is most likely a desolate mystic beast, and it's rumored that it possesses the strength to rival the god race. It was no wonder that when she released her dragon aura, the demonic beasts inside attacked her without any regard for their lives. It turned out that there was an old grudge between them. Then what about this one? This scroll was so dangerous. As long as one appeared, Godzilla would destroy New York in a matter of minutes. There's no need to worry about that, Yu Yin said. This scroll contains a self-destruction incantation in the first place. Adding on the passing of time, the demonic beasts inside will no longer exist. The reason why the flow of time inside was different from the outside world was to reduce the vigilance of the demonic beasts. they probably don't even know that they're trapped in the scroll. So that was the function of the moving severed land. The wisdom of the ancients was really broad and profound. Zhu Yao suddenly recalled that shadow. According to Sesame's guesses, that person should have come from the higher realm. Master had just come down from above, so he should be even clearer about it. After Yu Yin finished listening, his expression instantly sank, and after a long while, he slowly said, "The shadow you speak of is actually a shadow. I don't think it's from the upper realm." "No? What exactly is that?" With such terrifying power, she really could not think of anyone else other than the upper realm. Yu Yao. Yu Yin suddenly let out a long sigh and stroked her head. "There are some things you don't have to get too involved in. There will be a great calamity in this realm, and the reason I came down this time is to bring you up." "Calamity? What calamity?" Yu Yin turned silent. Those matters involved too many people, and he was powerless as well. He only had one disciple in his life, so he couldn't just sit back and watch. Therefore, he risked damaging his cultivation to forcefully descend to the lower realm to bring her back safely. "Listen to me and follow me." However, the more Zhu Yao listened, the more flustered she felt in the depths of her heart. It was definitely not simple. It was more likely to be related to a bug. What's going on? Do we have to go to the upper realm to avoid it? Yu Yin remained silent and simply looked straight at her. "You can't tell me?" Zhu Yao clenched her fists. "I'm not going up." Yu Yan's expression sank. "Nonsense. I don't want to be a deserter." She already knew about the bug. If there was really a catastrophe, then let it come. She had been in this world for so many years, although she still had lingering thoughts about the previous world. However, the ties here were growing deeper and deeper. Sesame, Little Radish, ZMO, Zidan, Feng Yi, Ancient Hill Sect, and the Azure Flight Sect which she had personally established. In fact, she had long regarded these people as her own family, but now she knew that there was danger. Yet, she just walked away. Was she still human? Zhu Yao smiled. "I won't die anyway, so you don't have to worry about me." Even if she died, she could still look forward to her next rebirth. But what about the others? Even if she really could not stop the bug, she had to at least warn those people, right? "Yu Yao, do you know that the path of cultivation has always been like this?" Yu Yin sighed. "The great Tao is heartless. The path of cultivation has always been something that goes against the heavens. I understand your nature, but you can't save everyone. This world has always been one where the strong prey on the weak, and the strong are respected. No matter what happens to the others, it's their fate as well. There will come a day when your kindness will harm yourself. Because of a moment of pity, hadn't she paid a heavy price? Take Xiao Yi, for example. Clearly, she could have gotten rid of him at the very beginning, yet, because of a moment of kindness, she let him go several times. In the end, she brought about such an ending. Although she had forgotten about it now, there will come a day when she will remember it. That day, she cried so bitterly and regretted so thoroughly. He simply could not bear to see her walk down this old path. "Master, you people always say that the great Tao is heartless and the heavenly Tao is impermanent. But who has truly seen the so-called heavenly Tao?" She understood all of these principles. Ever since she entered this world, the phrase she heard the most was "the strong are respected." Has anyone really asked the heavens and received a definite answer? In this world, the weak are prey to the strong. If you don't want to be killed, then you have to strike first. Just who was the one who told everyone this concept? The so-called heavens? Zhu Yao lightly laughed. "No, the heavens have never told the people of the world to be heartless, to be powerful, and to be cruel. However, everyone seems to have gotten used to it. If you aren't strong, you will be beaten. Killing, being killed. These things happen every day. As long as you're strong, as long as you're capable, it's fine. As long as you're strong enough, killing a weakling doesn't seem to be a big deal. Hence, everyone hates each other, competes with each other, kills for treasures, and plunder resources. Is this really the right way? In order to become strong, you can do anything, and you can even obliterate your humanity. Take Xiao Yi, for example. Clearly, he had peak-level aptitude and heaven-defying luck. Even if he were to cultivate in peace, he could completely rely on his own abilities to prove the great Tao and ascend into a deity. However, he just couldn't be satisfied. When he had something good, he wanted even better. Hence, after obtaining the metal spirit, he still wanted the water spirit and the wood spirit. And he made a move on her without even asking about the situation, and he did not remember the favors she had given him. No, the word favors had long disappeared from the bottom of his heart. The only thing left was the obsession of becoming stronger. I don't understand. Could it be that in order to cultivate the great Tao, we have to continue fighting like this? With such a method of cultivation, what will be left in the end? Is the great Tao that is attained through various kinds of suspicions, schemes, and slaughters really something that belongs to the heavenly Tao? Yu Yin turned silent. He had never thought about these questions before. Ever since he stepped onto the path of cultivation, the concept of the weak being prey to the strong had already been deeply imprinted in the bottom of his heart. His aptitude was excellent, and although he had experienced a few setbacks, he had never felt that there were any problems. Because this was how the world was in the first place, and he had never doubted this world either. However, he had a disciple now. Everyone says that immortal cultivation, attaining the Tao and becoming an immortal is the dream of everyone. Shouldn't the word deity be the most beautiful dream in every practitioner's heart? It should be the most perfect and soft part of human nature. However, in the current cultivation world, I can't see the slightest bit of beauty. Everyone says that the path of cultivation is a path of blood, but who would have thought that the path of deity that is walked out of this path of blood would be perfect? What is deity? And what is the Tao? The weak are prey to the strong, and the elimination of dissidents. Is this really the only way to become a deity? Zhu Yao sighed. She had wanted to say these words a long time ago, and they were also the things that she could not understand. Everyone thinks that absolute power is the true Tao. However, I believe that these are merely the darkest parts of human nature. I only see greed, selfishness, cruelty, and violence. How can this be considered as the word deity? Who still remembers that human nature still has the most basic kindness, tolerance, selflessness, and contribution? Are all of these not important? Master, are we cultivating as deities or as devils? The moment her words fell, a clear voice transmission suddenly came from the sky. That voice sounded as though it was echoing from the 9 heavens. It seemed to be very far away, yet it also felt as though it was very close to her ears. Zhu Yao felt a wave of comfortable energy circulating through her body, sweeping away the discomfort in her body. In an instant, a myriad of rays of light shone, as though an aurora had filled the entire sky. Faint fluorescent light scattered down from the horizon. That light seemed to contain some sort of unique energy. The moment it came into contact with the ground, all living things began to grow, and withered trees began to receive a new lease of life. The soil they were standing on earlier had already bloomed into a sea of flowers. Did she accidentally activate some sort of special effect? A phenomenon of heaven and earth. Yu Yin, however, deeply frowned. Such an anomaly. It must be a warning from the heavenly Tao. It seems like that day is not far away. What day was that day? You're really not following me up? Yu Yin once again asked. Zhu Yao clenched her fists and heavily shook her head. This was the first time she was truly rebelling against her own master. She felt a little guilty. She could tell that her master had spent a lot of effort in order to descend to the lower realm to fetch her, and even his cultivation had fallen back to the demigod level. However, Zhu Yao did not feel that there was anything wrong with her decision. Actually, in her own world, the term deity had always existed. In the very beginning, it only appeared in legends, and the concept was very vague. Thus, they called these legends as myths. For example, in a certain legend, a certain senior monk, or a certain Taoist, had obtained the Tao and became a deity, and so on. However, in her impression, those so-called people who obtained the Tao and became deities were all extremely benevolent and powerful people. They were all people who had done a lot of good deeds in that era, or in the legends. The standard for becoming a deity was to accumulate merits. While the deities in the myths and legends were all people who took it upon themselves to save the world, and the things they spread were filled with positive energy. However, she had never heard of anyone becoming a deity by killing a lot of people or robbing a lot of treasures. That was why she began to doubt this world. Furthermore, just from Sesame and her master's words, even after ascending to the heaven realm, the concept of strength being respected did not seem to have changed the slightest bit. Then, it was the same no matter where she went. Yu Yin let out a long sigh. A hint of fatigue was revealed on his face. His lips moved, as though he still wanted to say something, but in the end, he simply reached out his hand to stroke her head. The expression in his eyes grew deeper, and after hesitating for a moment, he finally could not help but step forward and pull her into his embrace. An extremely bright white pillar of light descended from the sky and instantly enveloped his body. This was the light of guidance. In the first place, he had forcefully descended to the lower realm this time, so there was a limit to how long he could stay here, and now, he no longer had the time. No matter what you think, you must not slack off in your cultivation. I will wait for you. Chapter 118.
Yes.
Zhu Yao nodded heavily. This time, she did not need him to steal her scent, as she immediately leaned forward and planted her lips on his, hugging him tightly. Until his figure became fainter and fainter, he said, "Call me any time if you need anything." Finally, he disappeared into the light pillar. Zhu Yao stood in her original spot. An object appeared in her hands, and it was even the jade pendant that she was exceptionally familiar with. Zhu Yao could not help but raise the corner of her lips. He raised his head to look at the sky, which had returned to its peaceful state. After a long time, he slowly lowered his head. Walking back to her room, she felt a little cold and cheerless. She pulled up the veil on the bed that had previously covered her body. Only then did she realize that she had regretted it. Damn it, it was such a good opportunity just now, and she actually missed it just like that. It was not easy for her to see her master, so shouldn't she be pushing him down any minute now? She actually only remembered to talk about principles with him and forgot the most important thing. Master, come back. Zhu Yao stayed in this peach garden for exactly 7 days before Sesame finally woke up. A month later, Ewing finally opened his eyes. At that time in the Severed Land, the three of them were injured, but she was the one with the most serious injuries. However, because of her master, her injuries had completely healed. Over the past month, she had not been idle. Instead, she had been working hard on her cultivation. She vaguely felt that the current situation was definitely not optimistic. Even her master had sensed it and came down to the mortal world to warn her. It could be seen that many things had happened in the 1,000 years she was in the scroll. Although she was a soul formation cultivator, she couldn't withstand a single blow from that black shadow. If she didn't continue to cultivate, she wouldn't even be able to protect herself, let alone the people behind her. Not mentioning anything else, the battle between Mu Meiyin and Yu Hanxin had definitely reached its climax. She hesitated. She decided to return to Jade Forest Sect first. She decided to tell ZMO about the matter regarding the shadow, so that he could make preparations early. After all, Ancient Hill was the #1 sect in the cultivation world. Adding that he had stopped Mu Meiyin's attempt to take over his body back, then with his divine sense. She must have resented him and schemed against him both openly and secretly. Since she had already decided, Zhu Yao did not stay any longer. She had Sesame enter her divine sense, carried Yuing, and flew towards the direction of Ancient Hill Sect. She was anxious to know the current situation, so the speed of her flying sword naturally increased a lot. But when he passed by a narrow valley, sensing the touch of his divine sense, Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. In the courtyard, a woman was currently drinking tea. She was dressed in a pink gown, and it was so clean that not a single speck of dust could be seen on it. However, her long hair hung loosely on her shoulders. She loved cleanliness and used the dirt removal art more frequently than anyone else. However, she was not good at tidying her own hair, and every time she tied her hair up, it would always look half dead. When she was young, whenever she went out, she would always coax her with sweets and help her tie up her hair. She was also a glutton, but hated using the body-cleansing art. She would rather use her own spiritual energy to grow various vegetables and fruits, and coax her into making various delicious food for her. Most importantly, she was very protective. Every time she was bullied, she would be even more anxious than herself. She would think of ways to help her bully her back. However, someone like her suddenly disappeared, and she left for 1,000 years. Master, she was a little afraid. What if it wasn't? Zhu Yao turned her head, and the corner of her lips formed a long arc. Raising her hand, she greeted. Yo, little radish, you're awake. Yu Yao felt that the scene in front of her suddenly became blurry, as though the pressure that had accumulated in the depths of her heart had suddenly found an outlet to vent out. Her tears uncontrollably flowed out. This gave Zhu Yao a fright. What's wrong with you? Why are you crying? Yu Yao, however, could not stop it no matter what, as more and more tears poured out. Unable to hold it in any longer, she pounced over, hugged onto her own master, and cried her heart out. It's fine, it's fine. Don't cry, don't cry. At that moment, Zhu Yao was a little flustered as well. Could it be that the impact of encountering a heretic practitioner was too great? Master, master, master. Yu Yao, however, cried even more agitatedly as she called out to her while sobbing. Why did you only return now? Something happened. Who knew that 1,000 years would pass in a blink of an eye? Zhu Yao patted on her back in an attempt to stabilize her emotions. This little radish, in her entire life, she had never cried so miserably before. Even when she was looked down upon because of her spirit veins in the past, she had never been like this. In the end, she was the one who brought up her childishness. It really made one's heart ache. This time, Yu Yao cried for exactly 6 hours before she finally stopped. In the end, Yu Ying, who had been standing at the side the entire time, was a little tired from standing. Most probably, after bringing him along for so many days, he had developed a little territorial awareness. He climbed onto her lap and conveniently pushed away Yu Yao, who was hugging onto her without letting go. Only then did Yu Yao stop her flood-like tears. Seeing that she had finally calmed down for a moment, Zhu Yao poured a cup of spiritual tea for her and casually asked, "Just what happened? Why are you alone? Where's Wu Song? Isn't he with you?" The moment her words fell, Yu Yao, whose expression was still a little warm earlier, instantly paled. Even the hand which was holding onto the teacup trembled for a moment. Zhu Yao faintly had a bad premonition. What happened? Did something happen to him? Or is there a problem with Azure Flight sect? No. Yu Yao drank a mouthful of tea, and her expression turned even uglier. Azure Flight sect is pretty good. He is pretty good as well. Zhu Yao's expression sank as she looked straight at Little Radish. He let you down. She used a definite sentence. Yu Yao's hand trembled, and the teacup instantly fell onto the table. The spiritual tea, which carried spiritual energy, spilled all over the table. Yu Yao wiped it with a flustered look. I didn't do it on purpose. Master, please don't blame me. I will immediately wipe it clean. Radish. A nameless flame instantly rose in Zhu Yao's chest as she pulled up her disciple, whose face was as pale as a sheet of white paper. I will accompany you to castrate him. Recently, Zhu Yao was a little troubled. After returning from 1,000 years of time difference, she realized that the people had changed. Many things had begun to deviate from their original course. For example, Little Radish. For example, Wu Song. If it was in the past, even if she was beaten to death, she would not believe that Wu Song would have a change of heart. Back then, when the two of them were together, she could see that Wu Song's feelings for Radish were sincere. However, no matter how deep the feelings were, most probably, they would not be able to withstand the erosion of time. To her, she had just handed Radish to Wu Song the day before yesterday, yet he threw it away the next day. That was why she was so furious. She wanted to find him to settle the debt. However, Yu Yao was unwilling, and had even knelt in front of her for this matter, begging for her forgiveness. Only then did she recall that to her, it had only been a day, but to them, it had already been 1,000 years. What could she forgive her for? Clearly, She did not do anything wrong at all. At this moment, she was a little regretful that she had taught Radish too well. She did not even have the slightest bit of resentment, let alone hatred. What she regretted even more was that back then, she had easily allowed the relationship between the two of them to develop and had even added fuel to the fire. Since I no longer have a place in his heart, even if I force it, what's the point? Radish lightly said these words. Clearly, in her heart, she, who would forever be a child, in reality, her heart had already experienced many vicissitudes. For a moment, Zhu Yao did not know what to do either. Only she knew the warmth and coldness of a relationship. Outsiders basically could not interfere. In the end, why did she have a screw loose back then? Chapter 119. The jade pendant emitted a faint white light. Not long after, like a three-dimensional projection, a small, white figure appeared on top of the jade pendant. His face was still cold as usual. He looked at his disciple who was lying weakly on the table. He couldn't help but raise his hand to touch her head, but he could only touch an empty space. Her voice unwittingly softened a little. What is it? Zhu Yao curled her lips. This disciple has fallen out of love. Yu Yin was startled for a moment. His eyes, which had just softened earlier, suddenly turned sharp and faintly emitted a hint of coldness. Jilted? When did she fall in love again? Therefore, the cold air spread everywhere. Zhu Yao's hand trembled. Did he have to suddenly become this terrifying? I'm talking about my disciple. My disciple. That child you helped me take in back then, your grand-disciple. Yu Yin paused for a moment, and the cold aura around him instantly disappeared completely. With a lack of interest, he responded. Whatever grand disciple. It seemed like it had nothing to do with him. I had originally saved a child, and seeing that he and Yu Luo were friends, I betrothed her to him. Zhu Yao recalled what happened back then, and faintly felt that she was too rash. Initially, she thought that she still had time to examine him again, but she did not expect that 1,000 years had passed just like that. But now, that child has fallen in love with another woman. According to Radish, that mistress was even saved by Wu Song himself. Yu Yin frowned. Since they're friends, why would he fall in love with another woman? To him, this was a little ridiculous. He said that the relationship between him and Yu Luo was merely that of a brother and sister. Excuses, Yu Yin coldly said. Zhu Yao could not help but let out a bitter laugh as well. She did not expect that her master, who originally did not have much EQ, could actually see that this was just an excuse for the other party to change his mind. But his disciple still couldn't see it clearly. What should we do? Yu Yin lightly said. Castrate him. Coo. Zhu Yao choked on his words. Dumbfounded, he looked at a certain someone who had a matter-of-fact expression on his face. Master, what did you say? Where's your pure and clean image? All right, they were indeed master and disciple. But this is Yu Luo's matter after all. Beat him until he can't take care of himself? Break his chrysanthemum. Master told me. Where did you learn all these words from? Give me back that pure and innocent master of mine. However, he only slowly turned his head and glanced at her, his eyes clearly saying, Didn't you threaten me like this too? She was guilty. Zhu Yao covered up her coughs for a few times, and only then did she manage to find her rationality in front of her master. Actually, I want master to teach me how to refine artifacts. Originally, he just wanted to complain to his master, but who knew that the situation would change so quickly? It was better to return to the main topic. Refining artifacts? Yu Yin frowned. Right now, you should quickly raise your cultivation and ascend. I'm still young. Zhu Yao chuckled. She did not wish to once again fall into the debate earlier, and recalled that shadow once again. Master, didn't you say that the reason why that shadow was following Mu Meiyan was because he had signed a blood contract with her? Yu Yin nodded. The blood contract is born from the original owner, and although the 5 elemental magic has a certain amount of damage, most of it will only affect the host. That person must have done something to the host's body to remove all damage before he was dispelled. That's why it couldn't be removed from the original owner. What about forcibly separating from the outside? Yu Yin was startled for a moment, as though he was shocked by her thoughts. After a while, he said, although this method of separation seems feasible in the outside world, but in this world, even if it was made from the sharpest mysterious ice-cold iron, it might not be effective. And immortal artifacts. Master, I want to try. She had already made up her mind. The biggest cheat in Mu Meiyan's hand was that black shadow, which was also the key to her becoming a bug. So what if she was reborn? She was reborn as a soul, not as a Shangji. She didn't believe that Yu Hanxin had completely defeated her in her previous life. I won't be able to suppress her. She had thought about the method her master had told her to cultivate as soon as possible. She definitely wouldn't be able to withstand a single strike from the black shadow. Only then would they have a fighting chance. However, no matter how much she cultivated, she was not confident that she would be able to defeat him before she ascended. Moreover, according to the information revealed by Master, even the people from the upper realm were somewhat fearful of the black shadow. On what basis did she believe that with a period of bitter cultivation, she would be able to possess strength stronger than the deities from the upper realm? Since she couldn't win in a direct confrontation, she could only resort to tricks. Just as Zhu Yao was about to inform Yu Yin of her plans, the door was suddenly pushed open. A blue figure instantly scuttled in and pounced into Zhu Yao's embrace. Yuing? Zhu Yao looked at the child who was already hugging her tightly and was a little speechless. She casually kept her master's jade pendant back into her storage ring. Only then did Yu Yao hurriedly run over. A hint of a troubled expression flashed past her face. Master, Yuing, he insisted on finding you. I couldn't stop him. Zhu Yao let out a long sigh, and for a moment, she felt a slight headache. This little child couldn't possibly have an Oedipus complex, right? Ever since he returned, he had been sticking to her, and could not be separated even for a moment. It's fine now, Yu Yao. Go and cultivate first. Have a good talk with him. This couldn't go on. She was about to go into isolation to learn how to refine artifacts. Distractions were the worst when refining artifacts. To refine a single artifact, not coming out of isolation for a year or two was a common occurrence. How could she have the time to watch over him at all times? Bending her waist, she carried Yuing up and placed him on the wooden bed at the side. Then, she casually pulled a chair over and sat in front of him. Yuing, I have something to tell you. However, as though Yuing did not hear her, he raised his hand and was about to pounce into her embrace. Yet, he did not let out the slightest sound. Only then did Zhu Yao recall that he basically did not know how to speak. How was she supposed to communicate with him, hey? Yuing. Zhu Yao straightened him up and pointed at his little chest. She decided to first teach him how to speak. He tilted his head. His little face was still expressionless. Evidently, he did not understand. All right. Zhu Yao's expression darkened, and then she pointed at herself. I'm called Zhu Yao. Jiwu, Zhu, Yo-Yo. Zhu Yao. Yuing was still stunned, and the corner of his lips moved. As though he had finally understood something, a moment later, he let out a yes sound. Probably because he had not spoken for too long. His voice was especially hoarse. If one did not listen carefully, one would not be able to hear it clearly. He was willing to speak. This could already be considered as a huge surprise. She had no choice but to bring him through so many things. She was really afraid that he would become autistic just like that. Zhu Yao. Zhu Yao had no choice but to teach him again and again. Yes, Yao, Yo-Yo, Yao. Yes, Yao. Oh right, it's Yao. Zhu Yao excitedly kissed him. Taking this opportunity to teach him more, she once again pointed at himself. Ing. Yuing. This time, Yuing did not speak, as though he did not have any feelings towards his own name at all. Zhu Yao was a little anxious, as she once again pointed at herself. Zhu Yao. Yao. She then pointed at him. Yuing. Silence. Sheesh, did he dislike his own name that much? Zhu Yao had no choice, and could only teach him from the basics. I'm called Zhu Yao. I'm older than you, so you have to call me Big Sis. Yao. He still only knew how to say this word. Call. Big sis. Zhu Yao still pointed at herself. Big. Big sis. Yu Ying frowned, and a moment later, the corner of his lips twitched. Take. Big sis. Zhu Yao once again corrected him and slowed down her speech. Big sis. Big sis. Big sis. He finally said the correct pronunciation. However, his tone was still a little strange. Zhu Yao, however, was already very satisfied. As a demigod sovereign of ancient hill sect, she merely carried an empty title and had never done anything for the sect seriously. Little martial ant, I wonder what plans do you have for the future? ZMO asked. I plan to go into closed-door training for a period of time. In the future, if she could not leave Ancient Hill Sect, it was best for her to stay here as much as possible. As expected, ZMO revealed a hint of a smile. It's naturally good that little martial ant can stay in the sect. According to rumors, Celestial Indus sect currently has 2 demigod sovereigns as well, and is on par with my sect. Now that little martial ant has returned, naturally, there's no need to worry. Celestial Indus sect? Wasn't that the sect Mu Meiyin was in? It seemed like it was the same as the scenario. Qi Han had already broken through into a demigod. Just as Zhu Yao was about to inquire about the details, a disciple suddenly came in to report. The sect master of Azure Flight sect had brought along a disciple and requested an audience. Azure Flight sect master? What kind of joke was this? Chapter 120. Ha ha ha. So it's Su'er. ZMO, however, seemed especially happy. Zhu Yao was completely dumbfounded. She suddenly had a bad premonition. This Azure Flight sect is a newly risen deity sect 700 years ago. Seeing that she was in a daze, ZMO thought that she did not recognize this sect and hurriedly explained. Although this sect was established not long ago and does not have many members, it is rather powerful. Especially during the Taesioluk secret realm back then, the 80 disciples he sent in obtained a large amount of resources and actually returned without any injuries. That was how it gained fame in the cultivation world. Especially in these few hundred years, the top 3 of every intersect tournament would definitely be a disciple of this sect. Zemo's face was filled with a sigh of admiration. Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. She turned to look at Yuluo at the side and saw her slowly nodding. The reason was because this Azure Flight sect was the radish pit she built, and the person who came was Wu Song. But when did he become the sect master? Why didn't she, the expired sect master, know about it? Senior Martial Ant, do you want to follow me to take a look? Zemo's face was filled with excitement. After pondering for a moment, he said a little apologetically, I won't hide it from Senior Martial Ant. You left for 1,000 years. 900 years ago, this sect master Wu Song came to propose marriage to my daughter. I saw that he was a promising talent, and he was sincere towards my daughter, so I decided on this marriage on my own accord. I didn't have the time to inform Senior Martial Ant. Although he was Yuluo's parent, in the cultivation world, the inheritance of master and disciple had always been passed down. Especially when it came to choosing a lifelong partner, logically speaking, the personal succeeding master had to agree to it. Zhu Yao looked at Yuluo at the side, whose face was filled with pain, and her expression instantly darkened a little. Only then did she find out that Yuluo and Wu Song were still engaged. He actually dared to cheat on her so brazenly. At that moment, she was a little angry that she was really blind back then. All right, I will follow you to take a look. She wanted to see what kind of ungrateful wretch Wu Song had grown into after 1,000 years. Little radish, follow me. Yuluo's expression paled. Yet, she still nodded and followed along. Zhu Yao pondered for a moment and cast a concealment art on herself, concealing her figure. Although ZMO felt a little strange, after thinking about it, he most likely wanted to test his son-in-law, so he did not make a sound. They sat in the main hall for a while. A group of people walked in majestically. As expected, the one in the lead was Wu Song. Compared to before, he was quite a bit taller and had lost some of his immaturity. Instead, he had gained some calmness. and there was spiritual energy circulating around his body. That spiritual energy was different from normal spiritual energy, as it seemed to be mixed with something else. Zhu Yao could not really tell what it was, but there was a feeling of disharmony within it. After taking a closer look, she realized that he was actually at the late-stage nascent soul stage. Following behind him was a group of familiar faces. It was Radish, number 1, 2, 3, and 4. They had all grown up. In the past, he thought that radishes all looked the same, but now that he looked at them, he felt that they all had their own characteristics. All of them were at the early nascent soul realm. In the blink of an eye, her line of sight landed on a woman who was leaning on Wu Song, half a step behind him. When she saw her face clearly, Zhu Yao instantly felt as though she had swallowed a fly. Mu Meiyin, why is this bug here? I greet Reverend Ziamo. Wu Song cupped his fists and bowed. Son-in-law, you don't have to be so polite. Ziamo cheerfully took a step forward. His face was filled with a smile. Earlier, Yu Luo had yet to tell Ziamo about the problem between the two of them. We're all family. Come, come, come. Sit. A hint of awkwardness flashed past Wu Song's face. Even the faces of the people behind him revealed a hint of guilt. Turning his head, he glanced at Yu Luo, who was standing next to Ziamo, and called out with a sunken voice. Yu Luo! Yu Luo frowned and turned her head away. Wu Song sighed. Pulling the woman behind him, he sat at the side. His actions of protecting another woman made Ziamo feel a little dissatisfied. However, he suppressed the suspicions in the depths of his heart. Su-er, I wonder why you've come to Ancient Hill Sect this time? Wu Song's expression grew even more troubled, and for a moment, he did not know what to say. Mu Meiyin at the side, however, lightly pulled him. Only then did Wu Song turn around and give her a smile. Only then did he make up his mind. The reason why I've come today is because I wish to cancel the engagement with your sect's Yu Luo. What? This time, Ziamo was truly stunned, as he looked at him with a face of disbelief. Could there be some sort of misunderstanding? Wu Song's expression grew even uglier, as he once again glanced at Mu Meiyin at the side. Sect Master Ziamo, back then, I wasn't sensible and mistook the relationship between siblings as feelings, delaying Lady Yu Luo. Fortunately, I came to my senses in time. Please forgive me. Ziamo's expression instantly turned as dark as the bottom of a pot. Clenching the fists by his side, a huge amount of anger surged, making him wish that he could beat him up. Come to his senses? What did he treat his own daughter as? Some sort of demonic barrier. He still had to wait until he came to his senses. A woman's reputation was especially important. If he were to cancel the engagement today, had he ever thought about how big of an impact it would have on Yu Luo? Although the engagement between the two of them was not announced to the various sects, the fact that Yu Luo had been staying in Azure Flight sect for the past few years was known by the entire cultivation world. It wasn't hard to guess what was going on between the two of them. Sect Master Wu. Ziamo took in a deep breath, and only then did he stabilize his temper that was about to explode. Back then, when you came to propose, this wasn't what you said. You swore frankly that you would treat my daughter well and never let her down. Only then did I hand my daughter over to you. But in the blink of an eye, you've gone back on your words. Who do you think I, Ziamo, am? Is my daughter someone you can simply trample on like this? That's not what I meant. Wu Song was a little anxious. In the first place, he was in the wrong in this matter. No matter how beautiful his words were, it was merely a quibble. If that's not what you meant, then what do you mean? Ziamo coldly snorted. His sharp eyes looked towards the weak and frail woman at the side, and a wave of pressure was released. I think it's this monster who's causing trouble. Although Mu Meiyin had a nascent soul stage cultivation, after all, she was only at the mid-stages. For a moment, she was unable to endure the pressure of a late-stage nascent soul stage practitioner and took 2 steps back. Wu Song's heart immediately ached. Grabbing onto her hand, he dispelled her discomfort. At that moment, he was a little furious as well. Sect Master Ziamo, what's the meaning of this? This matter has nothing to do with Yin. Why must you make a move against her? Zmo coldly snorted. He had merely released his pressure, yet he was already this anxious. If he said that it had nothing to do with her, who would believe him? Mu Meiyin at the side took the opportunity to lean into Wu Song's embrace. A hint of something flashed past her eyes, however. She immediately changed into a pitiful expression. She then suddenly turned her head towards Yuluo at the back and said, "Big sis Yuluo, it's all my fault. I beg of you, don't make things difficult for Big Brother Su. I know I shouldn't snatch Big Brother Su from you, but matters of the heart cannot be forced. Big Brother Su has always treated you like an elder sister and has taken care of you for so many years. Are you really that heartless to want to kill us?" She spoke with sincerity, and adding that expression, she looked as though she was being bullied, yet she was unwilling to retaliate. Yet, her words were actually scolding Yuluo for being ungrateful. Clearly, he had never treated you sincerely, yet you were still pestering Wu Song, refusing to let go. Zhu Yao could not help but praise her superb acting skills. As expected, Yuluo took 2 steps back out of anger after being reprimanded by the other party. Wu Song's expression, however, grew even more pained as he glared at Yuluo with a little anger. "Yuluo, back then, I had already told you very clearly. I only have yin-er in my heart. Why are you still acting like this?" Yuluo's face no longer had the slightest hint of blood. She clearly did not do anything, yet she was forcefully labeled as a villain by the two of them. She could not help but move her lips, as though she wanted to explain something. However, she was interrupted by Mu Meiyin. "Big Brother Su, don't blame Big Sis Yuluo. It's my fault. It's my fault." Yin-er. Wu Song grew even more furious as he ruthlessly glared at Yuluo. "Yuluo, I really did not expect that you would be such a person." Yuluo's pale face instantly paled, and her face was filled with despair. A clear and cold voice suddenly resounded. "What kind of person is she?" In an instant, the pressure of a demigod came assaulting from all directions. Along with Wu Song, the two of them were ruthlessly pressed onto the ground. Zhu Yao removed the blinding mystic art and slowly revealed her figure. She had watched enough of the 8 o'clock movie. It was time to take care of this dog. Zhu Yao walked over 1 step at a time, completely ignoring Wu Song's expression, which looked as though he had seen a ghost. With emphasis on every single word, she asked, "Wu Song, just what kind of person do you think my Yuluo is? That little radish who, even when she was wronged, still protected him. She treated him with sincerity, yet he treated her in such a manner. He really wanted to see just what kind of ingrate 1,000 years of time could turn him into." So, Sovereign, Wu Song completely did not expect that she would appear here. Clearly, she had disappeared for 1,000 years, and even he had thought that she had long fallen. Why would she suddenly appear here? And it was even when he was here to cancel the engagement. He could not help but recall the scene of Zhu Yao handing Little Radish over to him back then in Azure Flight. For a moment, Wu Song did not know what to say. In the depths of his heart, he was feeling a little guilty towards Yuluo in the first place, and earlier, it was just a moment of anger. Now that he saw her and recalled the matters of the past, he felt even more guilty. Though, Radish number 1 to 4 at the side had faces filled with disbelief. They opened their mouths as though they wanted to call out something. However, after hurriedly glancing at Wu Song in front of them, they shut their mouths one after another. "It's you." Though, Mu Meiyin exclaimed out. Others might not know the reason behind Zhu Yao's sudden disappearance, but she was extremely clear of it. A hint of panic was clearly revealed on her face. "How could you possibly be here? Why can't this sovereign be here?" Zhu Yao replied with a laugh. "It has been a long time since we last met, Celestial Indus Sect Master's daughter, Miss Ru." The moment her words fell, Mu Meiyin's expression instantly paled. Everyone present looked at Mu Meiyin on the ground with shocked expressions, and all of them had looks of disbelief. Celestial Indus Sect's daughter? How is that possible? Radish number 2 regained his senses after seeing Zhu Yao's expression and muttered, "Isn't she eldest senior martial sister's friend?" I heard that Rulu of Celestial Indus sect had long been expelled from the sect. That's right. I heard that it was because she harmed her fellow sect members. P.S. When everyone reads this chapter, I will already be on the plane. Amen, really? Chapter 121. Sovereign Zhu Yao. Wu Song frowned, regaining his senses from the initial shock. Although he was still pressed onto the ground, he still struggled to reply. Yan Er's original name is Mu Mei Yin, and is the head disciple of our Azure Flight sect's predecessor, Azure Melancholy sect. Back then, she was chased by a heretic practitioner, and only managed to reincarnate back into the sect after narrowly escaping death. They aren't from the Celestial Indus sect that you mentioned. Really? Zhu Yao coldly laughed. Earlier, when she heard Wu Song call her Yin Er, she had already guessed that Mu Mei Yin did not use the original identity of this body she had taken over. However, she never expected that she would actually be expelled from Celestial Indus sect. It seemed like the battle between her and Yu Hanxin in these past 1,000 years was really intense, and she was even in a disadvantageous position. Whether it's true or false, why don't we invite the sect master of the Celestial Indus sect to make a trip here, and we'll know. If you think about it, our ancient hill sect still has that much face. As expected, Mu Meiyin's face instantly paled. Her eyes flashed, and she immediately replied, "No need." Yinner. Wu Song had also guessed that this might be the truth, and his face was filled with disbelief. Mu Meiyin clenched her teeth. She knew best who she was. However, her current body was indeed green. This was a fact that she could not deny. She took a deep breath and restrained all her emotions. She turned to look at Wu Song, and tears instantly flowed out. Her face was filled with innocence and sadness. "Big brother Wu Song, I'm sorry. I was indeed called Relu before, but I didn't do what the rumors said. I was also framed. Please believe me, Sister Meiyin and I have known each other since we were young, and we are as close as sisters. You all mistook me for her. I also wanted to do something for Mei Yin who had passed away, so I did not deny it. All these years, have I ever done anything to let you down?" Her words were said very skillfully. Firstly, she overthrew the rumors that she was a traitor of the Celestial Indus sect. Furthermore, the former Azure Melancholy sect and Celestial Indus sect did indeed have some friendly relations. Thus, it could be explained that she knew the eldest disciple of the former Azure Melancholy sect, Mu Meiyin. Furthermore, she had also expressed that she was actually doing a good deed for her good sister. Sure enough, once these words came out, Wu Song's heart immediately softened. He looked at her with a pained expression. Damn, this green tea bitch. If she wanted to make a comeback, it would depend on whether she was willing or not. Although she had that powerful black shadow as a cheat, she did not see the black shadow appear. She was sure that the black shadow was not here at the moment. Either that, or he was heavily injured in the scroll and couldn't appear. That was the reason why Mu Meiyin had been in such a miserable state all these years, and was even chased out of the Celestial Indus sect. It was just that he did not expect that she would be able to hook up with Wu Song. Recalling the entanglement between her and Wu Song in her dream, Zhu Yao felt a little frustrated. Could it be that the plot couldn't be reversed? Wu Song would still fall in love with Mu Meiyin? Brother Wu Song, please believe me. Mu Meiyin was still trying her best to gain Wu Song's trust. She and Yu Hanxin were already incompatible like fire and water, and only Azure Flight was a safe place. She would definitely not let go. She glanced at Zhu Yao at the side, and in the depths of her heart, she could not help but secretly hate him. She had long known that this person would be her biggest obstacle, which was why she made the first move. He sent Phantom to kill her, but he didn't expect her to be so lucky. Yinner. Actually, Wu Song's heart had already softened a long time ago. He was even willing to fall out with Ancient Hill Sect for her. It could be seen that he was sincere towards her. "I believe you. Of course I believe you. Don't worry. I'll protect you." When his words fell, the expressions of the few radishes behind him instantly turned a little ugly, and they even faintly looked at Zhu Yao with awkward expressions. Putting aside whether what she said was true or not, just based on her identity as a traitor of the Celestial Indus sect. This would bring disaster to the Azure Flight sect. Azure Flight had countless high-level demonic beasts guarding the mountain, and it was now known as the strongest mountain protection array in the cultivation world. He was not afraid of external attacks, but his reputation would always be affected. He thought of the protective mountain array. The crowd could not help but look at Zhu Yao again. Others might not know, but they clearly knew that she was the one who placed down this formation. Sovereign. Wu Song supported Rulu and stood up. Although Zhu Yao's pressure had already been retracted, he still felt a little guilty towards the sovereign, though he did not think that there was anything wrong with choosing his true love. The reason why we came here today is to dissolve the engagement between me and Lady Yuluo. It was indeed this Su who misspoke first. I will do my best to make it up to her. Wu Song took out a storage pouch and passed it to Yuluo. I believe these should be able to make it up to you a little. Make it up to you. Yuluo was already on the verge of collapsing, as she looked at his expression with a pained expression. Wu Song, what do you take me for? Yuluo. Wu Song's hands trembled. He did not have the intention to humiliate her, but his actions had clearly revealed this point. After so many years, Yuluo had always been by his side, and they more or less had feelings for each other. Looking at her sad look, he could not help but feel his heart ache as well. Big brother Wu. Mu Meiyin called out. Only then did Wu Song seem to have made up his mind, as he placed the storage pouch at the side. No matter what, our engagement is over. Engagement? Since when did my disciple have an engagement with you? Zhu Yao could not help but speak up, as she coldly laughed. Wu Song was startled, as though he did not know why she would ask such a question. Sectmaster Wu, you have never mentioned marriage to my Jade Forest Mountain before, so where did this engagement come from? I asked Sect Master Zmo. Zhu Yao immediately interrupted him. Yuluo is my personal succeeding disciple. As a sect master, don't you understand the rules of the cultivation world? Wu Song was completely blocked off. Indeed, according to the rules of the cultivation world, since Yuluo was her personal succeeding disciple, then everything about her should be decided by her, let alone a huge matter as large as this. You actually never mentioned marriage, and I didn't agree to it either. How can there be such a thing as annulling the engagement? He cheated on her, and he even wanted Yuluo to be the scapegoat. How could there be such a good thing in this world? Could it be that Sect Master Wu wants to go through the entire process in one go, and go through the entire process of proposing and annulling the engagement? Heh. Sect Master Wu, you're fooling me like this. What kind of place do you take my Jade Forest Mountain to be? I didn't mean it that way. Wu Song grew anxious. Senior. Mu Meiyin seemed to want to say something. Shut up. Zhu Yao, however, immediately sent a wave of pressure towards him. And who are you? Is it even your turn to speak at a time like this? Under her attack, there were already traces of blood at the corner of Mu Meiyin's lips. Though Wu Song was worried, he still did not say anything, and simply tried his best to explain. Sovereign, you haven't returned for so many years. I don't care what you want to do. Zhu Yao immediately interrupted his words. Picking up the storage pouch on the table, she frowned and threw it back. Take your things away. I won't agree to this marriage. The descendant of Jade Forest Mountain is not something that just anyone can afford to be associated with. Wu Song was given the cold shoulder. Initially, he wanted to annul the marriage. Yet, Zhu Yao had secretly changed the concept into him being rejected. He had lost a huge amount of face for nothing, and in an instant, his expression turned ugly. However, after all, the person in front of him had done him a favor. And he had indeed done some disgraceful things while she wasn't around. Hence, he did not refute, as he cupped his fists and bid farewell, intending to return. The remaining radishes number 1 to 4 solemnly bowed towards Zhu Yao as well. Their emotions were still rather complicated. Though Wu Song was already the sect master and was acknowledged by them, Zhu Yao was, after all, the founder of Azure Flight. In the past, when she went missing, it was still all right. But now that she suddenly appeared again, their position was instantly awkward. Wait, Before they left, they were once again stopped by Zhu Yao. Wu Song and the rest stopped in their tracks and turned their heads around. "There's something I wish to ask the sect master of Azure Flight Sect." She intentionally emphasized the word sect master and spoke with a smile that was not a smile. "Is your esteemed sect planning to change its name to Azure Melancholy Sect?" When these words fell, not only Wu Song, even the expressions of the few radishes at the side turned a little ugly. Wu Song kept saying that he saved Mu Meiyin because he treated her as the eldest disciple of the previous sect master. After finding out her identity, he continued to tolerate her because of her identity as the eldest disciple's good friend. However, he had forgotten that they were currently Azure Flight Sect and no longer the Azure Melancholy Sect of the past. How could this excuse possibly work? Regarding Mu Meiyin being the eldest disciple of the Azure Melancholy Sect's sect master, Zhu Yao had actually faintly guessed it as well. In the past, she did not intentionally recall that dream. After all, ever since she took in Little Radishes as her disciple, the entire matter had already deviated from its original trajectory. And back then, when she went to save those 82 Little Radishes, she faintly felt that the name Azure Melancholy Sect was a little familiar. However, she never expected that Azure Melancholy Sect was actually the family of the female antagonist in her past life that was destroyed. This time, when she saw her together with Wu Song, she suddenly recalled this matter. In her past life, the female antagonist's entire family was destroyed, which was why she relied on Celestial Indus Sect and became Chi Han's disciple. And after she was reborn, she returned to the past. Due to the laws of space, it was impossible for two people with the same soul to exist at the same time. Hence, in this life, she died while fleeing for her life. And she, who had already cultivated to the nascent soul stage in her past life, had the chance to take over someone else's body. Actually, when she saved those radishes back then, she had suspected why those who stayed there were all low-level disciples with mediocre spirit veins, while not a single elite disciple could be seen. From the looks of it now, it wasn't that the sect was small and did not have elite disciples, but rather, those elite disciples, along with Mu Meiyin herself, had long escaped. The little radishes she saved were actually abandoned by the sect and were locked inside to wait for their deaths. Back then, she had even thought that this sect was rather humane. However, from the looks of it now, they were extremely selfish. Most probably, it was because that Shadow was heavily injured in the ancient scroll, and in these 1,000 years, he did not help her much, which was why she was forced to leave Celestial Indus Sect. Most probably, she was simply following her memories, and wanted to return to the already destroyed Azure Melancholy Sect, only to realize that her own sect was still alive. And the reason why Mu Meiyin stayed behind was because the current Azure Flight had a powerful mountain barrier formation formed by those high-level demonic beasts, which could protect her from being discovered by Celestial Indus Sect. Hence, with her original identity as Mu Meiyin, she stayed behind. Actually, if she had obediently stayed in Azure Flight, Zhu Yao would not have said anything. After all, that place was once her home. However, she definitely should not have stirred up the relationship between Wu Song and Yu Luo. Chapter 122. Zhu Yao felt that she had provoked enough. Pulling Yu Yao, who was at the side, she took a step out of the great hall. After walking a few steps, she turned around and added, "Oh right, congratulations Sect Master Wu for finding your true love. Although she has already lost her primordialine, I believe you won't mind, right?" When these words fell, Mu Meiyin's expression instantly paled as well. Zhu Yao, however, flew back to Jade Forest Mountain in a rather good mood. The matter of Mu Meiyin losing her primordialine was actually a guess of hers. After all, in her dreams, she had never given up on seducing Yu Hanqing's men and had used all sorts of methods. It had already been 1,000 years. She refused to believe that Mu Meiyin could still maintain her virginity. The result was extremely good. She had guessed correctly. The cultivation world placed a lot of importance on duo-pair companions. As long as the contract was sealed, it could not be removed without death, a woman's primordial een would usually only be given to the duo pair. Any other abnormal relationships would be treated as a furnace. Hence, Wu Song's rejection of the marriage would definitely bring about a huge impact on Yu Yao. With her identity as a personal succeeding master, Zhu Yao denied this marriage and secretly changed the concept to Yu Yao, looking down on him, rejecting the marriage. And it was also because of this reason. And ZMO was present back then as well. He would definitely be very willing to exaggerate this matter and spread it out. Wu Song was also a sect master, though she did not know how he managed to surpass her and become one. However, when one's status was high, there would always be some scruples. A dignified sect master being rejected was definitely not a good thing to hear. Furthermore, the one she had always thought of as her true love had long given her body to someone else. She wondered, in this life, under the premise that Mu Meiyin did not save his life, nor was she the white moonlight in his heart, how far could their so-called true love go? Of course, they could also suspect that she was speaking nonsense, as no one could tell if someone else's primordial een was still there with a single glance. However, she was someone from Jade Forest Mountain, and Jade Forest Mountain was unfathomable in the first place in the cultivation world. Even if what she said was fake, others would definitely guess that it was real. Furthermore, with Mu Meiyin's expression, it was real and not fake. Mu Meiyin had always thought that all her tragedies were caused by Yu Hanqing, this Mary Sue. However, although Yu Hanqing was a little hesitant towards her feelings and had left her lovers everywhere, at the very least, she was a pure person and did not do anything. Both men and women, one was willing to hit and the other was willing to suffer. What did this have to do with you, a passerby? Master. Seeing that her persuasion was getting more and more hilarious, Yu Luo's expression finally turned a little better. She could not help but mutter, "How can you ask your disciple to hang herself? Wasn't that just a metaphor? In any case, a woman has to treat herself better. Understand?" Yu Luo's expression sank. A moment later, she nodded. "Amen, Master. I will try my best to forget him." Good girl. As expected, she understood. "Oh right, why is your cultivation only at the late stage Azoth stage? Logically speaking, even those little turnips were already at the nascent soul stage." With the aptitude of her disciple's single spirit vein, no matter what, she should be at the nascent soul stage and above. Even if she wasn't a demigod, at the very least, she should be at the late stage nascent soul stage like Wu Song. Yu Luo's expression was a little pale. A moment later, she carefully replied, "I was initially already at the nascent soul stage. However, back then when Wu Song saved that Mu Meiyin, he was heavily injured. In order to save him, you couldn't have given him your primordial een, right?" Zhu Yao fiercely stood up. "The hell, that scumbag." No, I didn't." Yu Luo hurriedly explained. "Back then, I had used up all of the spiritual energy in my body. However, when I was about to finish healing my injuries, I was interrupted by someone, causing my meridians to flow in reverse, and my cultivation was damaged. When she was circulating her energy, Mu Meiyin suddenly barged in, However, she did not explain this matter clearly, as she was afraid that her master would be angry. Zhu Yao's brows were already furrowed into a crease, and she had the urge to rape someone's chrysanthemum at any moment. Were all men who approached Mu Meiyin a scumbag? Little Radish saved him, yet he actually had the face to cheat on her. Bitch. If she had known this would happen, she wouldn't have saved him back then. Zhu Yao felt a little frustrated. Ever since she came out from that scroll, things were getting more and more out of her control. The ending of her dreams, the driving force of striding forward. However, she was completely helpless. Suddenly, she thought of something. "You guys are still in contact with Qianning," Zhu Yao said with certainty. Back then, when Wu Song took out the storage pouch that he said was his compensation, she scanned through it with her divine sense and realized that there were a few mystic arts inside. They looked very familiar, as they were the things she saw in Qianning's 5th floor in Chiwu Pavilion. Oh right, that strange scroll was taken from Qianning as well. In an instant, there was another person who wanted to rape her chrysanthemum. Sovereign Qianning? Yu Luo was startled. Chen Ning is currently a demigod sovereign of Azure Flight sect. What? Why did that second beast mix in as well? Yu Luo was a little confused as well. Back then, when Master went missing, Sovereign Chen Ning refused to leave, saying that he wanted to wait for you to return. Thus, he stayed in the sect, and in these few years, he has been taking care of us in many ways. Zhu Yao frowned. She was wondering why Azure Flight could rise so quickly. So it was because of him. Chen Ning was a 10th-ranked demonic beast, which was equivalent to a late-stage demigod sovereign. In terms of reputation, he had already raised the height of Azure Flight sect. Furthermore, Chen Ning was a tycoon. Behind him was the entire Chiwu Pavilion, which had pretty much monopolized a large half of the cultivation market. It would be hard for Azure Flight sect not to become famous. The main point was that she was the one who brought this tycoon over. As expected, if you don't seek death, you won't die. Little Radish. Unfortunately, she did not have much time left. Although she was annoyed with Wu Song, she knew that she did not have the time to deal with this mess. Just as she was about to tell her about her closed-door training plan, she was suddenly pulled by someone. Ewing once again popped out of nowhere. His entire body was a little dirty, and his face was still expressionless. Opening his mouth, he called out, "Big Sis Yao, I already told you not to call me brothel sis. I'm a good person." Zhu Yao instantly felt that back then. She must have been out of her mind to teach Ewing how to say her name. "Can't find. Yao, don't leave." Ewing stuttered out a few words. Zhu Yao, however, understood. So the reason why he ended up like this was because he had been searching for her? As expected, this child had an Oedipus complex, right? She casually cast a dirt removal art on him, coaxed him a little, and then said a few words to Yu Luo, telling her of her plans for closed-door training. She then handed Ewing over to her and returned to the bottom of that cold lake. Ever since Wu Song took over Azure Flight, this was the first time he felt so troubled. After returning to the sect, he found out that the matter of him trying to marry Sovereign Zhu Yao's disciple of Jade Forest Mountain and being rejected had spread throughout the entire cultivation world. In the beginning, he did not mind it much. After all, he was a man. Although being rejected did not sound good to him, it was not a big deal. Furthermore, he was indeed the one who let Yu Luo down first. However, immediately after, he did not know why, Celestial Indus sect came looking for him and wanted him to hand over the sect's traitor, Rilu. Only then did Wu Song feel that the situation had become a little serious. Azure Flight sect had been developing very quickly these few years, but after all, it was a new sect and did not have much of a background. Celestial Indus sect, however, was a first-rate deity sect that had been passed down for millions of years. In recent years, they even had an additional demigod stage sovereign. No matter how one looked at it, Azure Flight should not be their enemy. And the one who came asking for her was also using the name of Sovereign Chihan. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.